who is recognized to speak. As previously noted, we will recognize members in two groups today. First, in order of seniority, we will recognize members from both chambers who were present before the gavel. Second, also in order of seniority, we will recognize members who were present after the gavel. Questions will alternate between chambers and between the majority and minority members present. Finally, members will be recognized for 3 minutes during each panel. Today, we will be using a virtual timer to keep time. To keep the timer in your view, select Grid or Focus View. Move your mouse over the second thumbnail from the right, click on the white circle, select Lock Participant, and from the list of participants, choose Hearing Timer. This will keep your timer in your view. And when you are recognized, you will need to unmute your microphone and pause 2 to 3 seconds before speaking so that your words are captured on the live stream. If you wish to have a document inserted into the record, please ask for unanimous consent and have your staff email the document to veteransaffairs.hearings@mail.house.gov. That's veteransaffairs.hearings@mail.house.gov. It will be uploaded to the committee document repository. Before I proceed, does any member have a question about the procedures for this hearing? I do not hear any questions, and I see no one indicating that they want to be recognized. So hearing none, I will proceed. I will proceed to my opening statement. Well, welcome to the joint hearing of the House and Senate Committees on Veterans Affairs to receive the legislative presentations of the American Legion and multiple veterans service organizations. It is truly an honor to join all the members of the House and Senate Committees on Veterans Affairs to hear directly from the veterans service organizations that represent millions of veterans and their families. I would like to welcome all the American Legion members and members of the auxiliary who have joined us today. We will hear the American Legion's testimony on our first panel. I would also like to welcome the Vietnam Veterans of America, Paralyzed Veterans of America, Jewish War Veterans, Military Order of the Purple Heart, the Wounded Warrior Project, and Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, who we will hear from on today's second panel. I would also like to specifically welcome any members from my home state of California. Now, we may not be in the same room like in years past due to the ongoing pandemic, but I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us virtually today. The opportunity to hear from our VSO partners is incredibly important to me. Many of our VSO partners are veterans themselves, and they represent veterans and their families at all stages of life and service. Getting to hear from all of you provides the committees with the opportunity to hear directly from you about what is most important to you and how we can best be of service to our nation's veterans. We secured several important wins for veterans last Congress, including passing the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act, the Deborah Sampson Act, and the Commander Hannon Act, and the Veterans Compact Act. I'm very proud of these accomplishments, and we could not have achieved them without you. But they are only the beginning. We plan to build on these accomplishments and continue our work for veterans this Congress and beyond. Now, we are making critical fixes to expand VA's ability to provide COVID-19 vaccines to veterans and their caregivers. I want to thank my friend, Ranking Member Bost, for introducing the VA Vaccine Act with me, which will make this essential fix to expand VA's authority and allow them to provide vaccines to all veterans, regardless of VA enrollment and their caregivers. I just want to make a quick note here that I'm reading about VAs across the country who are actually lowering the age of enrolled veterans. In my own VA that's near my district, the Loma Linda VA Medical Center, they've invited everyone over the age of 50 who are enrolled at the VA to come and get a vaccination. Reading from your testimony, it is clear that we share many of the same priorities. My committee's top priorities for this Congress include creating a more welcoming VA and building equity for veterans, reducing veteran suicide, addressing toxic exposure, reducing veteran suicide, addressing toxic exposure, ensuring student veterans receive quality education, advocating for women veterans, modernizing VA, supporting VA's long-term care facilities, improving VA's management and oversight, and ensuring our legislative accomplishments are implemented effectively. Our veteran community is changing and becoming extraordinarily diverse. The community includes more women, LGBTQ+, Black, Asian, Hispanic, and Native veterans than ever before. The diversity of our armed forces is an asset, and that strength should be recognized when veterans come into VA. They deserve to always feel safe and welcome when they walk through the doors. Relatedly, VA must acknowledge the diversity of its workforce and must address systemic discrimination in the workplace. We must ensure that health care and benefits are fairly and equitably distributed to all eligible veterans. And to do that, we must also ensure a safe and equitable workplace for VA employees. Our work to prevent veteran suicide also continues, and the challenges of the last year have only given us resolve to do more. We must continue to pursue well-researched and scientifically sound policies that have been proven to prevent suicide. Once such policy, the committee is working towards this Congress, one such policy the committee is working towards this Congress is expanding lethal means counseling so that more VA staff, contractors, and community providers have the tools they need to help vulnerable veterans and reduce veteran suicide. These are big goals, but I know that with the support and insight of the veteran service organizations that we have here today, as well as with the support of the administration, we will be able to deliver on them and fulfill the promises we've made to our veterans. Now, I look forward to hearing your testimony today and thank all of the organizations here for their continued advocacy and support for the veteran community. So thank you again. And Chairman Tester, I recognize you for your opening comments.
Thank you, Chairman Takano, and good morning. Thank you to Commander Oxford and other members of the American Legion for joining us. I commend you and your team's efforts to support veterans, especially during this pandemic. And I want to thank the advocates who are joining us today for today's second panel. I look forward to hearing from each of you. We are in a critical and unprecedented time for our nation and for our nation's veterans. As chairman of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, my focus is bolstering the vaccine supply chain and ensuring there is a system in place to efficiently and equitably distribute vaccines to all veterans, regardless where they live. We need to ensure that every single veteran understands the importance of being vaccinated and has the opportunity to do so. But to do this, we really do need your help. You need to help spread the word that the vaccine is safe and that the best way to protect your family members and yourself is to get vaccinated. This is the only way we'll get beyond this pandemic and get our communities and our economy back on track. Commander Oxford, I want to hear from you how VA's numerous programs are affecting the members of your organization. Tell me how the VA is doing in its efforts to support veterans who struggle with mental health issues or access to health care, and what needs to be done on behalf of women veterans. And I want to hear how toxic exposure impacts your members. Last year, we passed legislation to expand the presumptive list for Agent Orange related conditions. Now I'd like to hear your ideas on how we can improve the presumptive process to better serve our veterans. Lastly, as you know, ensuring veterans get their earned benefits is a top priority for me. Senator Moran and I, along with over 40 of our Senate colleagues, recently reintroduced the Major Richard Starr Act, which will ensure combat injured veterans get their full benefits. Senator Bozeman and I also reintroduced legislation that would reinstate the 48-hour rule, ensuring VSOs like the Legion are able to fully support their members through the claims process. Your organizations are crucial in helping veterans get the benefits that they've earned, and it is my goal to support you as the best that I can. We're here to listen to you. The voice that you and your members provide is an important source of information, and we in the VA attempt to do right by all veterans. I want to say welcome again and thank you for all that your organizations do on behalf of veterans and their families. With that, I yield back to Chairman Takano.
Thank you, Chairman Tester. Before I recognize my colleague and ranking member, Mr. Bost of Illinois, I will again note the plaque of the Marine Corps over my left shoulder. He's a proud Marine and a proud member of a military family. And so we are grateful for his service and grateful for the service of his family. Ranking Member Bost, I recognize you for your opening comments.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, and I'm delighted to join Chairman Takano, Chairman Tester, and Ranking Member Moran in welcoming you here today in this joint hearing. As I said yesterday, these hearings are unique, and they're one of the highlights of our work every year to be able to hear from you. The opportunity to meet with the VSO leaders and members from across the country is vitally important, and I thank you for being here today. I want to thank the incredible spouses and caregivers for your service and every day, and when we are so grateful for your selflessness and love that you bestow. And I wish we could be all together like this, like we normally are during this meeting, but we'll have faith that we'll be together next year. So I'm really looking forward to shaking your hands, listening to your stories. But in the meantime, it's a privilege to be here with you this morning as the lead Republican for the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. I'm excited to continue the good work and honorable processes to get things done for our veterans and their families. And I will also like to say that I'm a proud member of the American Legion. My home post is the Paul Stout American Legion Post 127 in Murfreesboro, Illinois. And before I get to any questions, yes, I did have, but you need to know I have my dues all paid up, so I'm good there. As the 117th Congress gets underway, I'm committed to working with each and every one of you to find common ground and address the toughest issues that affect the men and women of your organizations every day. My door is always open to you. As a Marine veteran, my father and grandfather served before me. My son and grandson serve now. This work is deeply personal to me and my family, just as it is to you and your families. And I do not take the responsibility of this role lightly. The support of your organizations have been vital in making us the positive changes at the VA. I work closely with your organizations on great legislation this past Congress, and I would like to highlight a few organizations for their work. Vietnam Veterans of America, for your many years of advocacy for the Blue Water Navy Act that was enacted to ensure we provide assistance to this important group of veterans. Wounded Warrior Project and Paralyzed Veterans of America, for your work on the Ryan Cools and the Paul Benny Specialty Adaptive Housing Improvement Act of 2019. And to every group here, thank you for your great work in helping us enact the Johnny Isaacson and David P. Rowe, MD, Veterans Health Care and Benefits Improvement Act of 2020. The laws will yield real results for our veterans, but our work is not done. We must continue to build on changes that are underway. As ranking member, my priorities this Congress include overseeing VA's continued response to COVID-19 pandemic, overseeing the implementation of our recent legislative successes, creating a pathway to care and benefit for veterans exposed to burn pits and other toxins, strengthening services for women veterans, preventing veteran suicide, improving the transition process, preserving veterans' choice and increasing access to care, protecting veterans' Second Amendment rights, and modernizing the VA's outdated IT system. Now, I'm aware that this is an ambitious agenda, but I know with your help, we can continue to push the ball forward, inch by inch, making improvements in the lives of veterans now and for the future generations of our warriors to come. In addition to my broader priorities for this Congress, I want to thank the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans of American, paralyzed veterans of Americans, and others for their help in continuing to push the passage of my bill, H.R. 637, the Veterans Economic Recovery Act of 2021. This bill authorizes up to 35,000 unemployed veterans to participate in a rapid retraining assistance program to help the veterans back to work. My thanks to the ranking member Moran and Chairman Texter for introducing a companion legislation in the Senate. And on a final note, this week marks 41 years since I graduated from boot camp on February 29th. 41 years ago seems like a long time, and it really seems like a long time. But as luck and my drill instructors would have said, I guarantee, because I graduated on leap year, I've only been out for 10 years. So, you know, it is kind of interesting to see that event come and go again, especially since in December is when my grandson graduated from boot camp. So I'm looking forward to the hearing today. I want to say thank you again for being here. And with that, Chairman, I yield back.
Well, Ranking Member Boss, we see that your grandson's following in the great tradition of your military family. That's awesome. And before I recognize the senator from Kansas, the ranking member of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, I just want him to know that I spent a summer as a National Endowment for the Humanities Fellow at KU, where I learned the chant, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. So I understand you're a Jayhawk. So Senator Moran, I recognize you for your opening statement.
Chairman Takano, thank you for your leadership in bringing us here together. Thank you for setting the record straight that you're a Jayhawk, at least in some fashion. And it's perhaps a reason that we've been able to work so closely together. And to Ranking Member Bost, happy anniversary of 41 years. Thank you for you and your family's service. And Senator Tester, Chairman Tester, thank you for the solid working relationship that we have had and continue to have as we've changed positions on this committee. I doubt that most members will see a significant difference. Certainly, they will not see a difference in the cooperation between you and me. Over the last 12 months, a lot has changed. COVID has affected lives and changed the way we're living. But one of the things that hasn't changed is the commitment of these veteran service organizations that are with us today. Their leaders and their members continue to advocate for and work on behalf of the veterans of the United States of America. And so while we have our challenges with COVID, let me express my gratitude to all those VSOs here today with us, not only for their testimony today, but for what they do every day to make sure that the opportunities for our American veterans continue to be realized. And particularly thank you to the American Legion. Commander, thank you for coming to Kansas. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to welcome you at a dinner in Wichita. And to our second panel, the Vietnam Veterans of America, the Paralyzed Veterans of America, the Jewish War Veterans, the Military Order of the Purple Heart, Wounded Warrior Project, and Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. And while I read those as quickly as I could, all of them are hugely important. All of them matter greatly, and they are making a difference in other people's lives. and I have great respect for all who served our country. Commander, I am a member of the Sons of the American Legion as a result of my own father's service in World War II. I honor them and people like my father and everyone else for their service, but I hold a special place for those veterans who served our country but are now serving other veterans, as these organizations and their leaders, their members do. My colleagues and I look forward to your testimony today. We look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to meeting with you in the future in which we can shake hands and have a more personal conversation. I know that we've accomplished some things, and they've been mentioned by my colleagues to this point, but we still have a good deal of work ahead of us, and that's why the relationship we have with the VSOs and their members is so important. It is one thing to pass legislation. It is an important thing to pass legislation, but it's even more important to make sure that the legislation meets the needs of veterans as it was intended. And I welcome the Kansas veterans who may be with us today. I thank them specifically for always educating me, treating me with the kind of opportunity that allows me to understand their issues and to thank them for their service. We have, I want to especially thank a couple of those with us today. I extend my gratitude to Bill Oxford, to Commander Oxford and his team at the American Legion. Shannon Ninanamanban and Lawrence Mantroy and Katie Purcell for their meaningful contribution to helping us get the Commander John Scott Hannon Veterans Mental Health Care Improvement Act signed into law. I also want to thank Jeremy Butler, who we will be hearing from in the second panel, and his team for their vital contribution to the Hannon Act and also to the Deborah Sampson Act as well. VSOs, like all of those joining us here today, and their members play a critical role in the legislative process, and the input is vital and appreciated. I very much appreciate all the veterans organizations and individual veterans who participated in a roundtable that we hosted last year on continuing challenges faced by veterans affected by toxic exposure and how the VA can best serve women and minority veterans. You give a voice to veterans who can at times feel unheard or marginalized. You provide an annual check for our committee and help us make certain we are on the right track and that no veteran falls through any cracks. Additionally, you are often the faces of American veterans for civilians in our communities, and you articulate to the public why it's in our national interest to have veterans succeed after their military service, and you can help us define what that success looks like. I've read your testimony. I look forward to hearing more from you about that. Lots of things that we are in agreement on. Our priorities are often the same: suicide prevention and mental health, toxic exposure, improving women's health at the VA, the 90-10 loophole, our schools and education opportunities, and to make sure that our benefits are still more timely given and provided than they currently are. You have my commitment, as I said earlier, that Senator Tester and I will continue to partner with each other and with you to address these priorities. We look forward to your presentations today. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time that I no longer have.
Well, I thank the gentleman from the Jayhawk State. Well, thank you, Senator Moran. I will now introduce the first panel of witnesses from the American Legion. We have before us today Commander James Bill Oxford, National Commander, the American Legion, and accompanying Commander Oxford is Mr. Vincent Traiola, Chairman of the Legislative Commission, Mr. Lawrence Montreux, National Legislative Director, Mr. Ralph Bozella, Chairman of the Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation Commission, Mr. Mario Marquez, Director of Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation, Mr. Daniel C. Hafer, Chairman of the Veterans Employment and Education Commission, and Mr. Joe Sharp, Director of Veterans Employment and Education. Senator Tillis, you are recognized to introduce Commander Bill Oxford.
Thank you, Chairman Takano, Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Boston, Moran, for the privilege of introducing excuse me, Commander Oxford. I've had the opportunity to work with Bill Oxford many times over the past several years in many capacities. He's held virtually every position one could hold within the American Legion in our great state of North Carolina and at the national level. Bill Oxford was elected commander of the American Legion on August 29, 2019, during the organization's 101st National Convention in Indianapolis. He's been a member of the nation's largest veteran service organization since 1986, and this year he made history as the Legion's first national commander to serve for 2 years. A native of Lenoir, North Carolina, Bill Oxford is paid up for life member, as well as a past commander of Post 29 in Lenoir. He served as department commander of the North Carolina American Legion from 2010 to 2011. He's a veteran of the Marine Corps, and he was an aviation electronic technician for the A-6 Intruder. He served in Vietnam during its initial enlistment. After being discharged as sergeant in 1970, Mr. Oxford joined the North Carolina National Guard. He subsequently attended Officers Candidate School and transferred to the U.S. Army Reserve, where he ultimately retired as colonel after more than 34 years of military service. A former mayor and city council member in Cages Mountain, North Carolina, he's worked since he was in high school, and most of his career choices have been in the maintenance and engineering field. Bill also served his community, volunteering as a coach, an umpire, a referee, administrator, and several youth athletic programs. And he served in public address announcer for the Post 29 American Legion baseball team. Bill's lifelong record of service to our nation and to our community have prepared him well to lead the American Legion. His theme as National Commander of the American Legion is a foundation for the future as the organization enters its second century of service. That's a fitting theme for Mr. Oxford tenure, given our work together on the Legion Act, a bill that expands eligibility for membership in the American Legion to veterans of all eras. I was proud to co-lead that bill along with Senator Sinema and work closely with the American Legion to successfully get the bill signed into law last summer. Bill, thank you for your service. Members of the committee, I'm proud to introduce a fellow North Carolinian and a great leader of the American Legion, James Bill Oxford.
Chairman Scano, Chairman Tester, Ranking Members Boss and Moran. In a normal setting, I'd like to ask members of the American Legion Family Leadership Team to rise and be recognized at this time. But this, of course, is not a normal setting. I would like to acknowledge some of those who are in the studio with me today, viewing this session online or attending virtually. With me today are the American Legion Auxiliary National President Nicole Clapp and Sons of the American Legion National Commander Clint Bolt. Also participating virtually are the national officers serving with me during this unprecedented second term, American Legion past national commanders, and importantly, I want to recognize the wartime veterans of our organization across the country and around the world viewing this online, who are dedicated to their mission as Veterans Strengthening America. It's again a great honor to bring to you and your distinguished Committee on Veterans Affairs the legislative priorities of the nation's largest veteran service organization. We deeply appreciate the alliance we have with Congress, especially now as we all turn a corner, united in a shared commitment to help lead this nation out of the dark year behind us. On the same day I presented our 2020 legislative priorities in this forum a year ago, COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic. The American Legion Post would be forced to close their buildings and in the days and months ahead. Many of our wartime veteran members lost their jobs. Some lost businesses or their homes. Many of us lost loved ones, colleagues, and or friends to COVID-19 or its effects, both physical and psychological. But the American Legion family does not lose focus on the mission at hand, nor did we lose faith in our ability to strengthen America at a time of great uncertainty and stress. As COVID-related obstacles confronted us, our members went to work confronting them head on. Our Buddy Check program reached out and found tens of thousands of isolated veterans and their families who needed food, medication, transportation, voting assistance, mental health checks, and most important, a compassionate voice during a tough and confusing time. When our friends at the American Red Cross were in urgent need of donors and collection sites last spring, we sanitized our posts, opened the doors, rolled up our sleeves, and gave our own blood in record numbers. When face masks and other protective gear were in short supply, the American Legion family found them, made them, raised money to buy them for others, and distributed them wherever they were needed in the hundreds of thousands. Our members fed the hungry when grocery shelves were empty and restaurants were closed. We protected homeless veterans who were especially vulnerable to infection. We set up virtual gatherings, led virtual career fairs, testified in virtual congressional hearings, participated in virtual town hall meetings to help veterans understand their benefits in the time of COVID. And we worked with the VA and Phillips to launch Project Atlas that uses American Legion posts to offer veterans safe, private places to have virtual online appointments with their healthcare professionals, no matter how far away they are or how difficult it might be to reach them in person. We paid respects to the fallen, wished happy birthday to World War II veterans through drive-by parades, handed out care packages for quarantine troops, and gave small business support wherever and however we could, all while social distancing. None of these operations replaced the American Legion's priorities for Congress, the White House, or the Pentagon, but these operations amplified them. Among our top priorities for the 117th Congress, you'll find the term peer support. Success of the American Legion Buddy Check program since it was introduced in 2019 and grew in importance during the pandemic can and should be made a cornerstone of VA outreach. We call on Congress to reintroduce the Buddy Check Week bill of 2020 to designate 1 week a year for VA as a time for laser-focused peer wellness outreach. After 2020, we in the American Legion know just how important buddy checks are for a veteran's mental health, emotional stability, and dignity. We also asked for the reintroduction of the PFC Joseph P. Dwyer Peer Support Program Act that would attach trained peer support specialists to local American Legion posts. There's no better way or place to find veterans in need or people willing to and wanting to help those veterans. Both of these measures stand to save veterans' lives, now being lost at too high a rate to suicide. Peer support programs can put faces, voices, and real circumstances behind the people we seek to help, veterans with PTSD or TBI, those who've been victims of military sexual assault, caregivers, and the rapidly growing number of women veterans who want nothing more than fair treatment and quality gender-specific services from their VA healthcare facilities. We're deeply concerned about the reported high incidence of sexual harassment from male staff and patients at VA healthcare facilities toward women veterans. And as we testified last summer, we call on Congress to direct VA to tolerate no sexual harassment and to foster a culture of safety, dignity, accessibility, and acceptance of all veterans. There can be no barriers to VA healthcare, especially during this time of COVID-19. Insufficient staffing or staff behavior that repels such use of VA can be such barriers. The need to recruit and retain VA healthcare providers, doctors and nurses, mental health counselors, and practitioners who specialize in the needs of women cannot have been more acute during the COVID-19 pandemic. Resources were stretched dangerously thin as beds filled during the year. Overburdened as they were, VA providers have stood strong. We all owe those doctors, nurses, and specialists our deepest appreciation for their timeless and continuing devotion. I call them the infantry in our war against the coronavirus. We have always known about the quality of VA care and the dedication of its providers, but we also know these providers are too few in number, especially in the nursing disciplines, which became such a great need in 2020. If VA is not right-sized for normal operations, it certainly can't hold up forever during a pandemic. It's a credit to those dedicated professionals that an American Legion survey last spring of more than 24,000 respondents revealed that some 90% of veterans were somewhat or fully confident in VA's ability to handle the pandemic. Unfortunately, that high-quality VA care is not accessible to enough veterans in the best of times. In the worst of times, access is almost impossible for veterans in remote areas that lack broadband services, or those closer to home who need to inch through traffic to reach facilities where in-person appointments are curtailed and overbooked. We all have work to do if we truly intend to efficiently connect veterans, especially in rural areas where care is difficult to reach with the VA services they earn and deserve. The initial steps taken last year in the area of telehealth need to become giant strides in the months and years ahead. The American Legion is proud to be on the forefront of this through Project Atlas. Post 176 in Springfield, Virginia, now has its telehealth station open and ready for safe, convenient use for VA patients. Telemedicine took on new meaning and urgency during the pandemic. The Washington, D.C. VA Med Center and others around the country have been offering telehealth appointments as an alternative to in-person care, including VA Video Connect appointments into the veterans' homes. That's all well and good as long as the veteran has the right computer and internet connection to take advantage of it. For many of our nation's older veterans, that's just not a reality. That's why Project Atlas is so important. This month, we will be opening a new location at American Legion Post 12 in Wickenburg, Arizona. And due to a recent decommissioning of a VA outpatient clinic, a third Project Atlas site will soon open at American Legion Post 5 in Emporia, Kansas. Future sites in Ohio and West Virginia are coming soon. Government accountability for toxic exposure during military service has been a legislative priority of the American Legion for decades to secure due relief for veterans exposed to atomic radiation, Agent Orange, and other contaminants. As COVID-19 proves especially dangerous for people with respiratory issues and cancers, the American Legion's call for accountability to veterans exposed to burn pits and now those who were exposed to a contaminated base in Uzbekistan, known as K2, is especially urgent. The pandemic also amplified our shared mission to help veterans who have sworn with their lives to protect our nation effectively use their GI Bill benefits without worrying about bad actors at profit-driven institutions that milk the system through the so-called 90-10 loophole, which needs to be closed. We appreciate the fact that it was recommended as part of the coronavirus relief package because there is certainly a connection to the pandemic. But if the 90-10 loophole needs to stand alone as a separate measure, Congress has our support. The American Legion's legislative priorities for this Congress also include reopening the pathway to U.S. citizenship for immigrants who served in our armed forces, protecting members of the U.S. Coast Guard in the event of a government shutdown, insisting that the federal government reduce its dependence on foreign suppliers, not just for jobs that it would create for veterans and other Americans, but as a matter of public health and national security. And our renewed call for a constitutional amendment that would allow states to pass and enforce laws to protect the U.S. flag from deliberate acts of desecration. The flag of our nation is the single most recognizable symbol of American unity. The pandemic, turmoil over racial injustice last summer, the storming of the U.S. Capitol in January, veterans struggling along and isolated at risk of self-harm, it all adds up to a profound need for unity and priorities that strive to make our nation stronger, safer, and hopeful. That the lessons we've learned over the last year will help us fulfill a pledge I have been sending to the American Legion throughout my tenure as National Commander to build a foundation for the future. Be happy to take any questions you may have for me or our Commission Chairman and National Staff, sir.
Thank you, Commander Oxford, for your, I want to let you know that your full written testimony will be included in the hearing record so that we can ensure every member and senator here will be included in the record. I want to make sure that every member and senator here has an opportunity to ask questions. So I'm asking that everyone limit their questions to 3 minutes. I now recognize myself for 3 minutes of questioning. Commander, I'll begin by asking you the same question I asked the DAV yesterday. On January 6th, Americans watched current and former military personnel participating in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Has the American Legion taken actions or provided guidance to your membership in response to these events? Do you have a policy on your members participating with or belonging to groups like the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys and the Three Percenters or other such extremist groups that specifically recruit veterans?
Thank you, sir, for that question. In the preamble to the American Legion Constitution, it states our obligation to uphold the Constitution of the United States. The violent actions of those who breached the Capitol is the antithesis of this. That's why on January 6th, I issued immediately a press release unequivocally condemning the attacks on the U.S. Capitol.
Well, thank you, sir. I know that the American Legion evolved the whole notion of boys and girls states in response to extremist movements, and I myself was a participant in that, and I think that tradition, I'm grateful for that tradition of the American Legion. My committee is working to ensure a more welcoming and equitable VA for all veterans. Can I count on your support as we work to ensure that all veterans feel welcome at VA and in VA spaces?
Yes, sir. I think that would not be an issue at all.
Wonderful. I thank you for that. And building on that, what is the Legion doing to ensure that all veterans feel welcome in your organization at your posts? And what steps do you think VA should prioritize to ensure that all veterans feel welcome?
Sir, I'd like to refer to our Chairman Bozella for that information.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Chairman Takano, for the question. I think you had two parts to that. My experience with the American Legion Post and in my position as chairman of the VA and our commission, I have traveled throughout the country, and anywhere I've ever been, I have seen veterans welcome in the American Legion Post. I think there was a time after the Vietnam War, a lot of us Vietnam vets were not welcome. And not just the American Legion, as even other VSOs. I'm a member of the VFW. It was an attitude. And because of Vietnam veterans, to ensure that will never happen to veterans again, that has gone away. And I have seen veterans of different races, different genders welcome in American Legion Post where I went. I think conversely, too, on the VA side of that, the VA needs to be aware of minority veterans, their needs, their differences, their ethnicities, and so on, when it comes to research and when it comes to care and treatment of particular diseases and conditions. Those factors all need to be taken into consideration.
Well, thank you for your response. My time is up. I'm going to call on Chairman Tester for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Takano, and Commander Oxford, thank you very much for your testimony. I appreciate it very, very much. Look, last week the VA told us they'd be receiving about 600,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines this week. That is good news. I think the VA across this country has done a very good job in getting the vaccines into the arms of our veterans. But the challenge we're starting to see is vaccine hesitancy, where folks are offered the vaccine but turn it down for whatever reason, because they don't trust it or whatever. I can't predict that. But can you tell me, how is the Legion communicating with its members about the COVID-19 vaccines and telling them why they should get vaccinated, and basically being helpful on the vaccine hesitancy issue?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Senator, for that question. The COVID vaccine, I think, if we look at who veterans are, most of us are old and stubborn and don't want to change our ways. But as we consider the COVID vaccine, I had my first shot a week ago, and I have wholeheartedly endorsed the vaccine for all veterans from the VA. And community care if that's necessary. But we've been supporting, endorsing, trying to make sure veterans realize the value of the vaccine. It's good. It's going to save lives in the long run. So we just wholeheartedly support and endorse the vaccine for all veterans.
Well, thank you, Commander Oxford. Anything you can continue to do to educate your members is much appreciated. I want to go to the claims process right now. The American Legion is a critical VSO, as others that are on today's second panel are, to support veterans and guide them through a VA claims process. As I mentioned in my opening statement, Senator Bozeman and I have introduced legislation that would reinstate the 48-hour rule at VA. Just tell me, what does this exactly mean from your perspective for the Legion and its members?
Yes, sir. I'd like to direct that question to Director Marquez.
Senator, good morning. Thank you for that question.
Good morning.
As you are aware, sir, the claims process entails a series of events that begin with the C&P exam process that goes into reviews. It also includes appeals and supplemental information, and it's a collective of actions that can be delayed and has been delayed by the COVID pandemic. Additionally, VA now is in discussions with us here at the American Legion for the 8-hour rule issue. And one of the things we're looking at is working out a medium where we can discuss a notification process where we have just enough or a sufficient amount of time to review the cases so that our service officers and the veterans that are involved can be comfortable. They have all the information that has been required and provided in their case so that they have the best opportunity to receive a thorough judgment on their eligibility for benefits from VA.
Well, I just want to thank you guys for being here today, and I'll yield back to Chairman Takano.
Thank you, Chairman Tester. I recognize Ranking Member Boss for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Commander, last week, Chairman Takano and I introduced the VA Vaccine Act. This bill will expand access to the vaccine to all veterans and the caregivers of those who are in certain long-term and home-based care programs. Our bill requires enrolling the veterans to be prioritized first, and it stipulates that the vaccine access to those other groups is, of course, dependent upon the availability. But do you support this bill? Why? And if so, why or why not?
Yes, sir. I'd like to address 2 things. The vaccine for veterans, I think, is a given. We need to support that 100%. But I'm glad you included caregivers. That's a critical part also. But yes, we do support that.
I appreciate that very much. And I also appreciate many of you have expressed support for the provisions in another bill that I've got, HR 637. Now, this bill will create a rapid retraining program to help veterans who are unemployed because of COVID-19. Last month, the Department of Labor estimated that over 500,000 veterans are unemployed and that the number is on the rise because of COVID-19. Do you agree with me that Congress should enact this legislation to create this program, and we should authorize the full extension of the slots, which is 35,000 slots, to help the veterans get back to work?
To the answer to your question, yes, but I'd like to direct that question to Director Sharp for some more information.
Wonderful.
Thank you for that question. At the height of the pandemic, we had over 700,000 veterans that are unemployed. 50% of those veterans were in the service industry. Now it's down to 500,000. So the American Legion has always been instrumental in pushing for gainful employment of our
Excuse me, Commander James.
military.
Commander James.
Yes.
Can you just pull your your microphone closer to you? Yeah.
Sure. As I was saying, the American Legion has always been for gainful employment of our veterans. And we definitely like to move those individuals that are in the service sector into gainful employment. And your bill that you're pushing will do exactly that. Right now, we're gratified that you're starting this pilot program with 35,000 veterans, and we definitely like to see that increase. Thank you.
I want to thank you, and thank you for being here today. And I thank the chairman, Chairman Takano, for joining me with those 2 bills and pushing forward. And we appreciate that very, very much. And as I said, thank you for being here with us, and thank you for all that you do. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Bost. Ranking Member Moran, you recognized for 3 minutes.
Chairman, thank you. Commander Oxford, the Mission Act's Veteran Community Care Program is an important component of delivering health care to veterans in today's environment. It is important pre-COVID and during COVID and post-COVID. The Community Care Act acts as a safety net for those that are the hardest hit by gaps in internal VA care to work to ensure that all veterans have access to timely, quality care on their own terms. I have some concerns that there are those that view community care as a step toward privatization instead of as an integral part of the VA's healthcare delivery system. How does the American Legion view community care and its role within that VA system? And secondly, the new administration has made clear that it intends to review community care policies, and I'm a bit concerned that that may result in restricting community care access. As the VA begins that review, what are some of the community care policies you and the American Legion would urge the VA to preserve?
Thank you, Senator Moran, for that question. And you mentioned my trip to Kansas last fall. Thank you for your reception, hospitality, and the welcome that that our team got when we visited Kansas. It was terrific.
That's wonderful to hear. We loved having you.
To your question about the VA system, we are totally committed to the VA. We oppose privatization, but when we think about the future of the VA healthcare system, it's got to be a hybrid system. The VA medical facilities have got to continue to do what they do, but the community care part of that leg is also just as critical. We've got to make sure those veterans in rural areas have access to care. So sometimes community care is the best and only way to do that. But in addition to that, there's also the telehealth or virtual presentation of medical delivery. So it's that there are some other things as far as requirements, and I'd like to ask Chairman Bozzella to discuss some of those.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Senator Horan. That's a great question. And you know that, you well know that through the years, there has been community care options by different names within the VA system, and it's really been an evolution of care, be it under the PC3 systems of 6 or 7 different varieties of community care that was finally conglomerated and put forth and through the choice program. And now that's evolved into what is now called community care. And the key is that veteran care is absolutely access to care. And is that access not only available to people in all areas of the country, and especially in rural areas where it's difficult, as you well know, by virtue of your state, but is it satisfactory care? And whenever we measure access, we need to measure the satisfaction of the veteran's care as a patient. And that's one of the things that we work on in our System Worth Saving program, which of course in the last year we have not visited hospitals because of that. But we want to maintain current access standards to ensure that veterans have choice when they meet those standards. And the veterans need choice for different reasons, be it the type of tertiary care that may be available, even primary care at times, gender-specific care for women, specific care for minority veterans if the VA is not able to handle that. And then the continuity of care. Is this care really being done satisfactory in the right way? And another thing that really comes to my mind, in fact, I made a call yesterday to my community care office in Colorado, and the recorded message says, this is the non-VA care office. And for years, I've been saying to VA, you should get rid of that non-VA care. Every care we get is VA care because I'm their patient in their system. And the other thing, the other piece that'll make this work is that the providers must be paid, the records must be transferred. And if those standards are met and kept, then we're going to have a good program, and the community care needs to be an option.
Commander, thank you. VA care is both community care and care delivered within the VA. It's all VA care. Thank you for highlighting that.
Thank you, Senator Moran. I now recognize Representative Levin for 3 minutes. Representative Levin, you're still muted. Can we make sure that your mic, let's make sure that Representative Levin's mic is turned on. All right, let's try again. Why don't you try again, Mr. Levin? Did he leave?
He's still in. It's just not, we can't hear him.
I can't see his picture anymore. But his microphone looks still
His microphone is on, it appears.
on my screen. Okay, looks like Mr. Levin looks like it's on now.
Well, it's on, but we can't hear him. Tell him we'll have our staff reach out.
Okay, Mr. Levin, we're going to have our staff reach out and figure this out. Meanwhile, let me move on to.
Go to the next one.
I'll go to Senator Blumenthal if you're ready. I'm going to call on you while we figure out what's going on with Mr. Levin's sound. Senator Blumenthal, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to you and Chairman Tester for holding this hearing. Commander, thank you so much for the service of the American Legion to our country. I'm very proud to be a member. Hope my dues are paid, and proud to welcome you and all of my fellow Connecticut members of the American Legion. You do such great community service, and you represent what's best in this country. I want to pursue the line of questioning that Chairman Takano began and express my gratitude for the very forthright statement that you made about the storming and assault on the Capitol. Obviously, that assault was led in part, maybe in whole, by white supremacists and violent extremists that reflect a growing threat to this nation's national security. In fact, it's been identified by the FBI as the most persistent and lethal threat to our national security. To what extent do you think that our nation's veterans ascribe to the views of white supremacists or violent extremists?
Senator, thank you for that question. When we think about our military services now, they are all volunteers. They volunteered knowing the requirements of the military service: poor pay, poor working conditions, continued deployments, those hardships that they face. They volunteered with one thing in mind, and that was to serve this country. I think if we remember that, military members sometimes get led astray, but if overall their commitment to this country supersedes anything else that they might be thinking about or talking about. But we have taken proactive measures to identify those individuals who've been charged in federal court with related to those crimes committed on January 6th. We will continue to monitor the Department of Justice website and cross-reference those charges with individuals from local posts. And if they are convicted, I would recommend immediate expulsion from the American Legion.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that very forthright answer. And let me cover one other quick topic. The rates of suicide among our veterans are still a very deep concern to many of us, and I would welcome any suggestions you have. I recognize my time is about to expire, so if you want to do it in writing, that's fine too.
Senator, let me just say our buddy check program is a way to address that. The PFC Dyer peer support bill is also an important and critical part of that. Both those can help our suicide prevention efforts.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you, Commander. Thank you so much for your service to our nation.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank Senator Blumenthal for operating on House rules. I want to go back to Mr. Levin and see if Mr. Levin has, we fixed the sound issue. Mr. Levin, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
I can. Thank goodness. Go ahead, sir. 3 minutes.
Terrific. Thank you. And thank you to the tech team for working on that so quickly. I want to thank the chairman. I want to thank our witnesses for joining us and really for all your work on behalf of veterans all across the country. And I particularly want to give a shout out to American Legion Post 416 in Encinitas, California, in my district. And they just do a wonderful job serving our veterans locally. Commander Oxford, in your testimony, you emphasized the need to safeguard veterans from predatory educational institutions. And I was glad to work with the Legion and other VSOs last Congress to introduce and pass the Protect the GI Bill Act, which, among other things, strengthened VA's oversight of schools receiving GI Bill dollars. But you're absolutely right. We haven't finished the job yet. A lot more to do, and we have to ensure that VA implements the protections in that bill both quickly and effectively. I'm very honored to be the chair of the Subcommittee on Economic Opportunity, and it's going to be a top priority moving forward to make sure that we get this right. We also have to pass legislation to provide student veterans with the same protections that Title IV students have under the 90-10 rule. The current loophole makes veterans a target for low-quality institutions that are unable to attract non-federal sources of funding. Commander, can you tell us a little bit about the ways that unscrupulous institutions have affected your members and their educational success?
Thank you, sir, for that question. I'd like to ask our VE&E Chairman Seahafer to address that issue.
Thank you, sir. You know, the American Legion is a leader. It's a leader in advocating the educational benefits of our nation's heroes. And you know, that's what they are. We are. And some of you also included in that. As you mentioned, though, there are bad actors out there. And you know as well as I that they stand ready to exploit us veterans each time benefits expand. And so we're asking, close the loophole. In fact, close the loophole now. Thank you.
That's music to my ears. I couldn't agree more. What would you say to those who argue that closing the loophole will restrict veterans' educational choices?
Chairman.
Mr. Levin, I'm going to hand that over to our director, Mr. Sharp.
What we tell those individuals is the American Legion's always been concerned with quality of education. And we expect all institutions of higher learning to provide that quality. And because of that, we feel that those individuals who may be restricted, we don't believe that will actually happen. So closing the loophole will do a far better job of protecting veterans than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm out of time, but appreciate all your good work, and I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Levin, for your leadership on this issue. This is an issue of which I've been very concerned with, and with which I've been concerned. Commander James, I'm very pleased the American Legion is also leading on this issue, understands it with regard to our student veterans. Let me recognize Mr. Rosendale for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Takano, and thank you, Commander Oxford. The American Legion is doing important work to ensure that our veterans' needs are being met, as are the other VSOs, which will be joining us later on today. I also want to say thank you to every Montanan veteran that's watching today. 1 in 10 Montanans or veterans or active service members. I'm grateful for your service and to our nation, and deeply appreciate the sacrifices that you and your families have made. As others have stated, I wish we were able to meet today in person, but I look forward to being able to come together in person next year. The American Legion has over 120 posts located throughout the state of Montana. These posts provide assistance and guidance to veterans, as well as provide local communities for our veterans. Now more than ever, these communities are critical. It's been a pleasure to hear from veterans back home in recent weeks. One item that is consistently mentioned is the role of the American Legion in their lives. Veterans must have access to high quality health care and access to care in a manner that is convenient for them. It must be delivered where they need it and when they need it. With that in mind, I'd like to ask, Commander, what can be done to shorten the time or speed up the process for veterans to define benefits and begin recovering them, specifically in regards to identifying a veteran service officer and meeting with them?
Thank you, sir, for that question. You mentioned the posts in Montana. There are over 13,000 posts scattered around the world. So we're honored to have your department as part of that 13,000. But when we talk about veterans health care, I'd like to ask Director Marquez to discuss that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. The bottom line is it takes a community of service officers and leadership from across the American Legion to ensure we get the information out that is required for our veterans to understand where they can go for assistance. The process of starting the benefits claim starts with the service officer, and there's a series of educational meetings and initiatives that must occur in that process. So in order for us to help those veterans out, it's a complicated process. It can be intimidating. And so referring them to our local post through the different programs, to include peer support type of programs, will enable our veterans to feel more comfortable and also give them the opportunity for having that health care and benefits that they deserve.
Excellent. So if we can speed that process up, or if we can deliver that information to those veterans so that we can shorten that time down, it would be greatly appreciated by me and certainly by all the veterans. Thank you so much for your time today. And Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Rosendale. I now call on Senator Tillis for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill, thanks again. It's good to see you. I wish I was sitting next to you at the table when I introduced you, and I apologize for having to step away. I have a Senate Armed Services hearing that I'm kind of multitasking in. One question I had, I know in your written testimony, you referenced the TEAM Act. That's something that we've worked on over here. We got it passed out of committee, did not get it done in the last Congress. We appreciate your support on that. And would actually like to have you be a part of the coalition that we will continue to build on to get that passed into law. Do you believe the TEAM Act is a priority, something that you all fully support?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you. In a recent hearing in the VA, we've heard about a number of a number of veterans engaging with the VA for the first time as a result of the COVID pandemic. I think that on the one hand, the pandemic's caused a lot of problems, but that represents an opportunity for us to engage veterans who had not previously really engaged with the VA. Are you all looking at that, and what specific steps can you all take to make sure that once we've touched them, we keep them in the mix? We know when you're connected to the VA, you may be in a position to where we can prevent suicides. The vast majority of veteran suicides are veterans who have no connection to the VA. Are y'all looking at that as an opportunity to have better engagement with veterans who have not previously been engaged with any veteran service organizations or with the VA?
Yes, sir. A couple of things just to address your question. If we think about veteran suicides, there's still a number, like 20 veterans a day committing suicide. 2/3 of those are not associated with the VA, but approximately 1/3 are enrolled, are part of the VA system. So as we continue to address veteran suicide, that is a continuing effort that we all share, is trying to emphasize to every veteran, enroll with the VA. That help, that assistance is available, and we're here. We want to help if you'll let us. But those veterans not enrolled, we are encouraging to become part of the VA. And I'd like to dump that off just to Chairman Bozzella for a comment.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Senator Tillis. The COVID has certainly affected VA in every aspect, the claims and the health care, and certainly the mental health. And the peer support programs, as the commander mentioned earlier, it's an alternative. It's a complement to the mental health programs that VA has. And the VA has gone virtual so much in the mental health world in their vet centers as well as their hospitals. And there's a lot of virtual counseling taking place. And that's been a very important aspect of this as well. And we do encourage our veterans to get involved with VA healthcare, our peer support programs, and help in any way that we can.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to compliment you on the organization. This is a best practice for doing these virtual things, which I hope we get away from. But thank you all for the great work on the committee and the staff that are making it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. I appreciate that. My staff is hearing what you're saying. I very much appreciate what you're saying. And I too hope that we are going to very soon be able to get back to better. So with that, Senator, I appreciate your comments. I now recognize Representative Pappas for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Commander, I appreciate your testimony here today. I want to thank you for the incredible work that our veteran community, that members of the Legion, that your leadership have done to provide support to the American people through a really tough experience this past year. It certainly has made a difference in people's lives, so thanks so much. I wanted to say how much I appreciate you mentioning the Coast Guard in your testimony as well. There are those of us who are fighting for parity when it comes to pay for the Coast Guard, and I hope that's an issue we can address here. All of our uniformed service members should know that they can count on a paycheck for their service, regardless of the status of appropriations here in Washington, and I hope that's an issue that we can address with some success this term. One other issue I wanted to bring up, and I appreciate this being a part of your priority list, is the repeal and replacement of the 2001 and 2002 authorizations for the use of military force. I'm glad to see those included. As you note, there are individuals who are parents who were deployed in the early 2000s who are now sending their kids off to the same part of the world. So I'm wondering if you could give us some more insight into why this is important for the Legion and why it's important to our veteran community to repeal these outdated AUMFs.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. I don't think anybody's in favor of a forever war, but I would like to ask our legislative director to address that issue.
Thank you for that question, sir. And as a part of our inclusion in our written testimony, our National Executive Committee passed a resolution this past fall labeled Addressing the Forever Wars. And what that asked was to repeal the post 9/11 AUMFs and, if necessary, replace them. When we talk about memorializing the service of our global war on terrorism veterans, we need to have a discussion on these post 9/11 AUMFs. And if necessary, update them. These AUMFs have become the legal basis for an ever-expanding range of military action that, frankly, was never imagined when anyone voted on them in 2001 and 2003. There's members of this committee who were between 5 and 10 years old when that initial vote happened. This war has become an intergenerational war, and Congress needs to reassert its role in the foreign policy decision-making process and have a debate about this, and if necessary, reestablish AUMFs that are effective for contemporary conflicts.
Well, I thank you for those comments. I think your voice is so welcome as part of this conversation. So thank you for making that a priority, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Representative Pappas. Before I recognize Senator Sinema for her 3 minutes, let me just say that as chair of this joint House and Senate proceedings, that I don't feel like I can impose on senators the rules of the House. This will not affect how we conduct House proceedings in the future. Senator Sinema will not be turning on her camera, but I want to recognize Senator Sinema for her 3 minutes. Senator?
Oh, thank you very much, Chairman. Commander Oxford, thanks to you and your team for participating today. Last year, when you appeared before these joint committees, I was excited to announce that Arizona had been selected to participate in the Project Atlas pilot program. This year, we worked with the American Legion National and Arizona chapter, the VA, and Philips North America, navigating the challenges of the pandemic to safely bring an Atlas pod to an Arizona American Legion post. The Atlas site will provide free internet broadband access to veterans and provide a private and secure interface for veterans to connect with VA providers. The site will save veterans lengthy travel time and cost, providing easier access to VA care. We hope to have more information to share with Arizona veterans in the near future once the site is operational. It's been a great team effort to bring this resource to Arizona, and I greatly appreciate the efforts of the American Legion to make it happen. Now, Commander, Project Atlas is just one of the efforts the VA is undertaking to expand telehealth capabilities to rural communities. What is the American Legion learning from its participation in Project Atlas that could help inform these and other efforts to expand telehealth capabilities at the VA? And what are you hearing from your members about the Atlas sites?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I'd like to ask Director Marquez to address those issues.
Senator Sinema, good morning. Thank you for that question, ma'am. We have had some significant lessons learned initially, primarily evolving around the COVID pandemic. And what I mean by that is there's been a very low performance at this time in our first post, primarily because of access issues and concerns amongst veterans to come into the actual post and doing their appointments there at the American Legion. Additionally, because we are in an urban setting, we have competition from availability of broadband that is high speeds, and the veterans can, conduct their appointments from home. However, we are also hearing from those same veterans that they don't have the privacy that they need in their home, and many times those discussions are tough, and they want to have that discussion with their provider, even away from their family. So those are the two significant issues that we have run into, and once we get all 5 of our pilot sites online, we are going to continue to analyze, collect and data and analyze that data so that hopefully we can see how the program will move ahead and to see any changes or other developments that we may want to recommend for continuation of this program. Telehealth and telemedicine works. We support the Atlas program. We would like to continue at this time.
Well, thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, I see that my time is about to expire. I do have additional questions, but I'll just submit them. Thank you.
I want to express appreciation to my friend, the senator from Arizona, for observing House norms as far as time allotted. Thank you, Senator Sinema. I now call on Representative Nels for his 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Takano, Ranking Member Bost, and Chairman Tester, and everyone else on this call. Thank you for what you do, what you all do for our veterans, and Commander Oxford. Thank you. Very impressive resume. 30 plus years in the military. I only did 22. You've done 30 years in the military, and what you do for our veterans is just so much appreciated by me and with my father serving in Korea and my 2 other brothers in the military. I was a member of the American Legion and served as an All-American Post Commander in the VFW almost 20 years ago. So I appreciate these veteran service organizations and what they do each and every day for our veterans. But my concerns today are related to the backlog of these VA benefit claims. And I know we've kind of tiptoed around it a little bit today. And in your written testimony, it talks about the issues that COVID-19 has placed on these compensation and pension examinations. And I agree, I support the idea of the VA. They've turned over many of these examinations to the private vendors, and I'm sure they're doing everything they can to try to reduce this backlog. The idea of using technology to our advantage, these telehearings, see like what you have to say about that. I believe that those telehearings can certainly help reduce this backlog. But for a veteran that myself has gone through this process, which took a long and enormous amount of time, but I got through it. What are you hearing today from your members as it relates to the quality and the timeliness of their disability exams during this pandemic? And what can we do to make sure that we do everything we can to speed up this process.
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. I'd like to say that we're sure that the COVID pandemic has had a tremendous impact on that backlog. But for specifics, I'd like to direct that question to Director Marquez.
Congressman, thank you for that question, sir. I'm going to answer this question in part one, and then I'm going to refer over to my chairman for part two of the answer. Specifically, the COVID pandemic has had significant impact on the CMP exam process. Many cancellations, thousands of cancellations at its point during February, March, April of last year, as you're well aware. The CMP exam process involves a series of events that has now resulted to the current 231,000 approximate number of cases that are backlogged over at Veterans Benefits Administration. What they're doing right now to reduce the backlog is they are focusing on a mix of telehealth, in-person appointments, and what we call available clinical evidence in order to get rid of unnecessary CMP exams. Some of the complaints that we were getting initially was, IT problems, cancellations, and difficulties in rescheduling. But I know that VBA has implemented the Medical Disability Examination Program standards, where they hope to hold a 90% or greater patient satisfaction for that. And we look forward, and we're working with VBA to make sure that those standards are adhered to and we reduce the backlog. I'd like to pass it over to my chairman to finish that.
Very briefly, Representative Nels, your point on the virtual hearings before the Board of Veterans Appeals is an excellent point. We want to see more of that. Our veterans are then represented by a service officer with them virtually, and people don't have to travel. That's a good program, and it's helping with to reduce the backlog.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Blessings to you.
Thank you, Representative Nels. I recognize Representative Mervan for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Takano. I appreciate you putting this together. I would like to also thank Commander Oxford for all that you do serving the veterans, also serving the community and the quality of life for veterans who have served our nation. I am a son of the American Legion's member of American Legion Post 369 in East Chicago, Indiana, one of Indiana's largest Legion posts. Marty Zeglowitz, who is a past Indiana commander, along with his wife, who's an Indiana commander of the Women's Auxiliary, and very prideful. I am a freshman member of Congress. And in my past elected capacity, I worked very closely with the American Legion with homeless veterans, and we're able to put 3 homes built with Habitat for Humanity. In one of those homes, there was a survivor of sexual assault while she served in the military. And we've provided the social services for her as she was dishonorably discharged because of drug use, because of that sexual assault. And we worked with her to find a job, to also work with the VA to get the services that she needed. That being said, in your testimony, women are the fastest growing demographic in the armed services, and you have had the improved access to care for military sexual trauma victims and survivors. Commander Oxford, if you could take moments to address that and what the American Legion's thoughts and leadership will be on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. When we think about women veterans, I think we've got to make sure the VA understands that women are the fastest growing part of our veteran society. Whenever we think about VA care for females or women, we've got to make sure they receive the gender specific care and make sure that those veterans are not part of a re-victimization of their accusations. We also need to make sure and ensure the sensitivity training takes part as part of that. And we just want to make sure the military sexual trauma sensitivity training is followed and completed as part of that.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with your organization to implementing legislation that protects survivors who are in the military. And also, I am a chairman of the subcommittee on technology and modernization, and will work very hard to make sure projects such as Project Atlas and the electronic medical records, if you could touch base on your input with electronic medical records.
When we think about those issues, I'd like to ask Chairman Bozzella to address that.
Actually, my director here is attending briefings between Cerner and the VA, and he can do a better job of that.
Thank you, Congressman. The American Legion has not heard many issues from our membership themselves. All of the electronic health record fielding has had some delays related to IT systems as well as other issues, most of which have been fixed or addressed by Cerner. Additionally, Cerner has met some of their benchmarks, and we fielded 9 additional sites this past week in the San Diego area. And the American Legion supports and is in favor of this program because we see the electronic health record as the connective tissue between a veteran when they leave the active duty service and become a veteran. It is very critical that we get these programs to maintain and stay on track and not cause any more delays, and support the VA's program for electronic health record management.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Moran. I recognize Senator Hassan for 3 minutes. Senator?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to both our chairs and our ranking members. Thank you for this opportunity in this hearing. And thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today, for your service, and then for the work you do to support our nation's veterans each and every day. I want to ask Commander Oxford a follow-up to you on a little bit of your testimony. I am grateful to the American Legion for what it has done to launch the Buddy Check program, something you launched in March of 2019 to encourage members to reach out and check in on local veterans who may be struggling. This program emphasizes the importance of mental health and suicide prevention through peer-to-peer wellness checks that help veterans support each other. This week, Senator Ernst and I reintroduced the Buddy Check Week Act, a bill that would designate a week each year for the VA to help get the word out and educate veterans on how to perform wellness checks and engage with their fellow veterans. Commander Oxford, can you just tell us more about the importance of buddy checks and how your members help their fellow veterans in need?
Yes, ma'am. Be happy to discuss that issue. We instituted the Buddy Check program a year and a half ago, before the COVID pandemic reared its ugly head. But we were using the Buddy Check just to check on our fellow veterans. Over the months before the COVID pandemic, we were providing transportation and medical appointments. We were picking up groceries. We were picking up prescriptions. We were doing things just to make sure those veterans out there knew that we were still here. We still care. We still want to help if you'll let us. But as the pandemic grew worse, we started learning a lot of other things. The isolationism, the separationism, all of those were affecting the mental health of a lot of veterans. So as we continued to do our buddy checks, it became more evident about the criticality of the need for that. So that's why we were supporting the Buddy Check Week bill with the VA, and we'll continue to do that.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really grateful for the support. More importantly, I'm really grateful for the initiative that the Legion showed in starting this program up. And I will also add to the witnesses who spoke about the importance of supporting women veterans. One of the things I'm hearing about in rural New Hampshire from women veterans is just their need to know who each other are. And that may be something we can all work on together as well, so that in more rural areas, our women veterans have a sense of who their peers are and how they can connect with them. So I'd really look forward to working with you on that as well. Thank you again all for your service, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Our staff will be happy to work with you on any of those issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hassan. I recognize Representative Dr. Miller Meeks for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair Cano and Senator Tester and ranking members as well. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for your service. I'm also a proud veteran, and a member of my county's Veterans Commission. And as part of my work with our former Governor Branstad, there was an initiation of home-based Iowa in Iowa that was, we altered licensing laws to permit veterans to use their military experience and training in order to get jobs. We also had veterans preference and a hierarchy, and also eliminated state income tax on veterans pensions in order to honor and serve our military members and members leaving active duty service. We've heard a lot about suicide and suicide prevention, and we know that part of that, part of mental health, part of having a purpose in life is having employment. And in our county, the Vet Tech program, which you all are familiar with, is very popular. This is a program that allows veterans the opportunity to use their GI benefits to participate in short-term training in the IT industry. I recently proposed in our education and labor markup for the COVID-19 bill for the funding to be increased from 45 million to 100 million, even though this is a pilot program. So I know it's popular in our state of Iowa. I was just wondering if you could give your reflections on how your members and the veterans you interact with see this program, if there's a need for increased funding, and can you identify any improvements that are needed to help promote the program? Thank you. And I yield back my time.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. The licensing and credentialing issue continues to be an issue, but as we move forward and address those specific things, I'd like to ask Director Sharp for his input.
Programs such as those are critical for us to making sure that our veterans, as they transition out the military, are gainfully employed, where they're able to take care of themselves, their families, and contribute to the communities. Currently, we have about 36 million jobs in high-tech areas that we can't seem to fill. So any type of job or program that gives veterans the ability to be trained, employed, and well paid is something that the American Legion has always pushed. And that's one reason why our licensing certification program we've been working on for the last 20 years. We would like to see veterans prior to them leaving the military have a revenue stream coming into that home. So they don't have to go unemployed. They don't have to reuse the GI Bill, something that they've already learned in the military. And plus, it also professionalizes the military, so it becomes an employer of choice and not an employer of last resort. So those type programs are excellent. Thank you.
That that completes the question of this panel, but I want to ask the American Legion before dismissing them. We have a couple of senators who are shuttling between other hearings in the Senate. Services hearing going on, but I'm going to introduce the second panel, but I'm wondering if the Legion, since we're doing this virtually, you and Commander, if you're willing to have
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Oh, Mr. Frankel. Oh, great, great.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll recognize you for 3 minutes, and then if the senators come back, I'll let them. But there may be, I do want to move forward to the next panel, but my question to the American Legion is, will they be willing to stick around to respond to some of the senators' questions later? But Ms. Frankel, go ahead. 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to our presenters today. I know that now with COVID, the entire access to education has been disrupted, but you know, especially prior to COVID, we know that the transition for returning veterans is sometimes much more challenging than the average student coming out of high school, let's say, when the veterans come out and they want to go back to college. I'm wondering whether or not you or have any familiarity with these centers for excellence for at the community and at the state colleges and other colleges to help the veterans transition.
Yes, ma'am. I'd be happy to address that. I'd like to ask Chairman Seehafer from Veterans Employment Education to address that.
Thank you for the opportunity, Commander, and thank you for the question. Again, if we know the understanding of the TAP program, and first and foremost, I do want to, sometimes we get all the negative things out there, and sometimes you get that brunt as well. But I just want to say that because of you and the DoD, you have made meaningful strides of improving that program over the last few years. And so, on my side, I guess, what we're looking at is that you can definitely build on that foundation. And that would be where we would hold accountability. And all I'm looking at, or we're looking at, is holding that federal agencies would be accountable for implementing what you have already passed. And especially when we deal with the Battle for Service Members Act. But, these are the kind of things that we're looking at. I would like to just turn it over to Mr. Sharp, just one more, just for a few seconds, if I could, please, because he has the boots on the ground.
Again, the American Legion is aware of such programs. We have a pretty close relationship with many of our community colleges and trade schools that provide that type of training. Again, we're looking at all institutions of higher learning that receive the GI Bill to put out a quality product so veterans are gainfully employed. And again, many of the colleges and community colleges that are producing those type of programs have shown critical results as far as veterans being able to be gainfully employed and taking care of their families. So yes, those are various institutions that the American Legion has always supported and will continue to support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And as the mother of a United States Marine War veteran, I want to thank you all for your service and what you do for the veterans. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Semper Fi.
Thank you, Representative Frankel, and he's a Marine and a great chef as well. How about that? A Marine and a chef. You must be very proud, Representative Frankel. I know you're proud, and you're a grandma. You're second grandchild, right?
Yep, two boys, two future Marines, possibly.
All right. I understand that Senator Tuberville has joined us. Senator Tuberville, I recognize you for 3 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service, Commander Oxford. I just got one question. I've dealt with quite a few veterans over the last few years. Some are my friends in Alabama, and we've had some success with PTSD with hyperbaric oxygen chambers, and we don't have the opportunity to use that through the VA. Could you talk a little bit about that? I don't know if you've had any dealings with it or worked with it or seen any studies, but we have had some pretty good success with it.
Senator, I'm sure you're familiar with Willis Frazier. His first comment would be "Roll Tide," but as we move as we move forward on your question, I'd like to ask Chairman Bozzella to address it.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Senator Tuberville. The American Legion, in our VA and our commission, we have a TBI, PTSD, and now suicide prevention committee, and we have had 2 publications over the years after much research. And the first publication really dealt with the many different treatments for TBI, PTSD, mental health ailments. And the one thing that we have learned that there is no one treatment that works across the board for everybody. One of the things, one of the treatments that we did spend time on was HBOT. In fact, there's an HBOT institution just 20 miles from my house, and I've toured it many times and I've seen it in action. And the antidotal research is very high. It helps people, and there's no question in my mind, and any of us have seen the place, but there's very limited empirical research on the subject in this country. Some of the best research has come from Israel And I really believe that VA needs to do more research on this subject. VA does have a couple of sites where they use HBOT. Would I recommend it? I would certainly recommend a veteran trying it if they have access to it, but it has to be carefully monitored to see if it will in fact work for that veteran.
Thank you very much. Again, it's anything that we can do to help these young men and women with this PTSD, and we see a lot of it in Alabama. We've got 380,000 veterans, and so we're looking for any possible answers to a very difficult question. So thank you very much. Thank you.
It's worth a try, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, thank you, Senator Tuberville. I see that Mr. Trone has joined us. Mr. Trone, are you prepared to ask three? So I recognize you for 3 minutes. So go ahead, sir.
Great, thank you. Commander Oxford, with the shortage of professionals who can treat our veterans in mental health and substance use disorder, which are much more all over the board now with COVID as a residue of that, where do we need to specifically increase our workforce on the mental health area for counselors and also addiction specialists? What do we need to do to deal with this?
Yes, sir. I think one of the issues there is funding for those particular specialists with psychiatrists or related fields. As we address the mental health, we need to fully fund and make sure those slots are filled. And to do that, we need to fully fund some of the recruiters for our medical fields as well as the mental health fields. So I think fully funding those positions and perhaps adjusting the pay disparities between some of those particular specialists could help and probably would help our mental health issues in the VA.
And Commander Oxford also, Whip Clyburn has a great bill which we need to get through on expanding broadband affordable for all Americans. And how would that deployment help our vets, particularly access to mental health and addiction care? Great broadband.
When we think about the medical fields and the telehealth, the virtual things that we do related to the medical fields, I think any assistance that we could do to make those kind of access availabilities more or better, that would really increase the availability of those kinds of support. Director Marquez, would you address that?
Simply, National Commander, I'd like to add a few things on it. Probably most importantly, psychiatry is one of the most common clinical occupations with severe shortages in VA. So if you could maybe focus on that, that would be something I believe is instrumental to the problem with suicide prevention. Also, in addition to financial incentives, we need to look at other options, non-financial incentives, to make sure we maintain and retain our best and most talented doctors in the system. Chairman Bozzella would like to add to that.
The only other comment that really is significant to this is we have resolutions on file and have taken real issue with the psychotropic drugs that VA has used over and over again for mental health treatment. And there's so many other ways to treat a person. The drugs do more harm than they do good. So we're very careful about anything that has to do with heavy drug use.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trone. Are there any other members that wish to be recognized? American Legion has informed me that they can stay in their studio until 1 o'clock. Any other members want to be recognized before I move on to the next panel? And then we'll welcome our members from the other side, the senators. Mr. Lamb, I understand, is Mr. Lamb, are you present and ready to ask questions? If not, I will begin to...
Mr. Chairman, I am here.
You are here. Okay, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you. I just needed them to promote me. And thank you for giving me a chance to speak.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Mr. Lamb, 3 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank our panel for putting in all this work and sticking with us all this time, and for everything you guys do. I'm a member of the Legion. You guys are very active in my community, and it means a lot to us here in Western Pennsylvania. I wanted to return to the subject of January 6th, if I could. I know that others have asked about it this morning, so I apologize if I'm plowing the exact same ground, but I think this is a little different. I understand that you are looking at who is being named in the various indictments and checking against your membership rolls. I think that's important. I'd like to ask whether you are also taking a look at the use of your facilities, at the use of the Legion brand and logo, Legion resources like contact lists and emails. I ask that because there has been reporting of various VSO logos sort of showing up at some of these events, including January 6th. There also has been reporting of meetings taking place in and around different VSOs around the country, particularly with groups like the Oath Keepers, who target veterans, recruit veterans, selling them a false ideology about their oath, encouraging them to overthrow the government. They believe they are already in a civil war with the government. These groups like the Oath Keepers have very identifiable logos of their own. People have bumper stickers, hats, sweatshirts, all that kind of stuff. And I guess what I'm asking is the Legion putting any policies in place that would prevent groups from like the Oath Keepers from ever meeting at your halls, and also to address, even the issue of people wearing Oath Keepers gear or 3%ers gear or having it on their trucks in your parking lot. Are you contemplating these kind of measures going forward?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. But our national headquarters, we've not been asked to assist with the identification of these individuals, but we are open and willing to assist with any investigations surrounding the breaching of the Capitol. We do oppose the use of American Legion emblems in unauthorized positions, and we'll vehemently oppose that.
Thank you, Commander. And my time's already running out. I appreciate you guys hanging around for me. I just want to encourage you also to consider the issue of the use of Legion facilities around the country and active measures to identify, especially the Oath Keepers, but also there's a small set of groups here at issue who are not that hard to spot. I mean, they are proud to be Oath Keepers. They make sure everybody knows it. And these groups prey upon our veterans. They lie to them about the meaning of the oath and what their duties are as a veteran in the United States. And I think the more that we can speak up and put active policies in place to find them and keep them from having access to the broader veterans community, we will all be better off. So thank you very much for all that you do, and I hope you'll take that for consideration. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Lamb, and I appreciate your service as a Marine, along with Ranking Member Bost. I understand we have Representative Moore. Representative Moore, if you're prepared for your 3 minutes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the time. I just want to let these gentlemen know how much we appreciate the job they're doing for our country. I have been in some other committee meetings, so don't necessarily want to take up all my time, and I will yield back the balance of my time. But thank you again for meeting with us today and spending time with us, and I appreciate what you do for our nation and for our veterans.
All right. Well, thank you, Representative Moore. And I thank the American Legion for being willing to hang on their studio. And if we have senators that come back that want, out of courtesy, I just want to make sure that they have a chance to ask you questions. I appreciate your graciousness in remaining available to us, to the Joint Committee. I will now not dismiss the American Legion, but I will express my appreciation from hearing for you today and express my appreciation for your willing to stay around. I'm going to move toward the introduction of our second panel. And I now call up and recognize our second panel. We have with us today Mr. John Rowan, National President and CEO of Vietnam Veterans of America, otherwise known as VVA. Mr. David Zerflu, National President of Paralyzed Veterans of America, or PVA. Mr. Jeffrey Sachs, National Commander, Jewish War Veterans, JWV. Mr. Ernie Rivera, National Commander, Military Order of the Purple Heart. Mr. Michael Linnington, Lieutenant General retired of the U.S. Army. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Wounded Warrior Project. And Mr. Jeremy Butler, CEO, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, or IAVA. Mr. Rowan of the VVA, you are recognized for 5 minutes to present your opening statement. Is Mr. Rowan available? Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you, sir. Go ahead.
Very good. Anyway, I just, first of all, let me congratulate Senator Tester on assuming the chairmanship in the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. We've worked with him for years as the ranking member, and we're happy to see him as chairman as well. So I submitted our VVA's legislative agenda, which is rather lengthy and would take me quite a long time to go through it all. But I want to focus on one thing in particular, and that's the issue of toxic exposure, which I see as a priority in the House Veterans Affairs Committee. It's been 53 years since I left Southeast Asia in the Air Force and returned home. In those 53 years, I've been dealing with veterans issues most of those time and have been dealing with toxic exposure issues, both personally and through my actions as a veterans advocate. For about 50 years now, it seems. And I must say, from Vietnam to the present day, the United States has been sending troops off to places that have poisoned us, both here and abroad. And frankly, have been fighting us all the way on trying to deal with the issues that have come out of that exposure. We're pretty familiar now with all of the long laundry list of Agent Orange presumptive diseases, which has recently been expanded. Even now, 53 years later, the Senate and the House finally passed a bill that added 3 more diseases. There are still others that we think are out there that need to be taken care of. But it's not just the Agent Orange stuff. We're the most obvious, and we've been at it longer than anybody else. But the Gulf War was exposed to all kinds of problems, and the Gulf War veterans are still getting compensation for diseases the VA hasn't even agreed they've got or identified. Since 9/11, post 9/11, all the folks who've landed in Iraq and Afghanistan have been exposed to all kinds of issues, including burn pits in particular. And now we're really starting to dig into the area of exposure here at home. Camp Lejeune, quite honestly, is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many, many locations around the United States that have all kinds of toxic issues related to them. I understand the state of New Mexico is suing the Air Force for polluting their water. This has gone on in several other locations around the country. There are other exposures that have put our men and women in harm's way. And then we have the oddball places like K2, which was mentioned earlier, which now I understand is a bill just to take care of the veterans from K2, the 8 or 10,000 people who were exposed to this horrible former Russian air base in Uzbekistan. The issue is really trying to see what we did right with Agent Orange and keep that and expand it to get the VA to do the right thing for everybody from our era and every era that followed us. So, for example, the original act, Act of 1991 was a wonderful act, and it forced the VA to do certain things, to research, to try to find out what research was going on with regards to toxic exposures, to report on those researches, and then to determine what presumptive diseases were therefore related to those who served in Vietnam. And that's worked. Unfortunately, it's now expired. We would like to see that bill rejuvenated, and we'd like to see the Congress add not just Agent Orange, but all the other toxic exposures that's happened since. And in regards to that, we would also like to see the establishment of a Toxic Wounds Act of 2021 to establish real regulations for veterans exposed during wartime and at home. Authorize the VA to work with the National Academy of Medicine to review diseases associated with those exposures and establish a presumption of service connection, excuse me, for the purpose of veterans, disability, and survivor veterans for any illnesses, excuse me, that the Secretary determines is based on those exposures. And we need a real electronic health record to track all of this. I'm open for any questions on this and any other issue that you folks have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowan. Mr. Zerfla, you are recognized for 5 minutes to present your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Takano. Hopefully you can hear me.
I can't hear you.
Chairman Tester, Chairman Takano, and members of the committees. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning on behalf of the tens of thousands of veterans with spinal cord injuries and disorders who depend heavily on the benefits and health care available through the Department of Veterans Affairs. This week, advocates from our 33 chapters have been meeting virtually with their members of Congress to educate them about the issues of concern for paralyzed veterans of America. Our top priority remains the protection of the VA's specialized system of care for catastrophically disabled veterans. We firmly believe VA is the best provider of health care for veterans with spinal cord injuries and disorders, or SCID. The VA's SCID system of care provides a coordinated lifelong continuum of services for veterans that has significantly increased our lifespans and is not replicated in the private sector. COVID-19 has reinforced our belief in this system. VA has done a good job of minimizing the pandemic's impact for veterans who are inpatients in one of the VA's 25 SCID facilities and six SCID long-term care centers. VA has kept infections of inpatients and staff to a minimum and stepped up countermeasures to protect this extremely vulnerable population. Our principal concern is vaccinating all SCID veterans and their caregivers against the virus. We are pleased the VA policy now prioritizes vaccination for all veterans with SCID and urge VA to continue to promote expedited access to vaccine for caregivers throughout the state and local partnerships. We also urge Congress to provide VA with the authority to directly vaccinate a wider range of caregivers. Staffing also remains an ever-present concern, and we urge Congress to provide enough funding for VA to reform its hiring practices and hire additional personnel to meet demands for services in the SCID system of care and ensure the positions, pay, and other incentives they offer are competitive with the private sector. If the VA is allowed to underfund the system and understaff its facilities, their capacity to treat veterans will be diminished. It could lead to closure of facilities and reduction in services offered to them. Right now, we are extremely concerned about efforts to permanently reduce inpatient beds in some SCID centers, including at facilities that provide specialized long-term care. The capacity of the system to provide a continuum of care must be preserved and strengthened to meet the needs of paralyzed veterans. VA currently operates approximately 180 long-term care beds. When averaged across the country, that equates to about 3.6 beds available per state. Let me repeat that. VA currently operates approximately 180 long-term care beds. When averaged across the country, that equates to about 3.6 beds available per state. Despite the need for more beds, VA is not requesting, and Congress is not providing sufficient resources to meet the current demand. This deficiency must be addressed. In addition to adding specialized long-term care beds, PVA also supports expediting caregiver supports for catastrophically disabled veterans. Although Congress expanded access to VA's comprehensive family caregiver program, VA did not begin the first phase of this expansion until October 1st of 2020, which is 1 year behind schedule. VA has adequate resources to accept new enrollees and deliver program services. Thus, Congress should direct VA to complete the expansion to veterans of all eras this October. Finally, PVA members seek greater access to adaptive vehicle assistance. Access to an adaptive vehicle is essential to their mobility and health. Because of the high cost to buy a replacement vehicle, veterans may retain one that is no longer reliable. We ask you to support H.R. 1361 and Senate Bill 444. This bipartisan legislation would allow eligible veterans to receive an automobile allowance grant every 10 years for the purchase of an adaptive vehicle. Thank you again for this opportunity to share our views and your ongoing commitment to veterans and their caregivers. The unique needs of catastrophically disabled veterans, from mental health needs to women veterans with SCID who are a growing distinct subpopulation, must not be overlooked. That's why we need your help. We need your help for us to protect access to VA specialized services, expand access to long-term care, expedite caregiver benefits, and increase transportation options for paralyzed veterans. Chairman Takano, this is my last time testifying as president of Paralyzed Veterans. It's been a distinct honor, and I want to thank all of you who help our nation's veterans. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Zurfu, thank you very much for your testimony, and I'm surprised to hear the news about that. I mean, it's probably been well known, but thank you for informing us, and thank you for your many years of service and for our nation's veterans. I now call on Mr. Sachs. You're recognized for 5 minutes to present your opening statement.
Thank you. Good morning and greetings from Chicago. I'm Jeffrey Sachs, an Army Gulf War veteran and National Commander of the Jewish War Veterans of the USA. JWV is one of America's oldest active continuous veterans associations, and we will be celebrating our 125th anniversary on March 15th. I'm here today to tell this committee about veterans issues that are the most relevant and concerning to our members, and these issues are not just important to JWV, but among many of the VSOs you are hearing from. The first is elimination of the means test for all veterans, especially World War II veterans. I am ashamed as an American that we have a means test for the few veterans that remain of the greatest generation that fought and won World War II. On January 21st, the South Florida Sun Sentinel reported that an Army veteran in his 90s was turned away from receiving a COVID-19 vaccination at the West Palm Beach VA Medical Center because he makes too much money. When the means test was passed in 1996, World War I veterans and veterans in their 80s and 90s were exempted. We think you should end the means test starting with World War II veterans. They certainly deserve the courtesy. I must tell you, I am an angry VA Priority Category 8C veteran who became seriously ill of a diagnosed autoimmune disorder within 1 year of my service in the Gulf War. But since I could not prove the nexus of the disease to my military service, and I also made a decent wage as a Chicago cop, I was denied VA medical care. I detest that there is a means test for veterans' health care. It is not what we were promised when we joined the military. Frankly, I'm envious of the health care that you in Congress have legislated for yourselves, but I don't deny your right to good health care. Please don't deny mine or any veteran who chooses to work hard to provide for their families. Next, no privatization of the VA. JWV strongly is opposed to privatization of the VA. It has been established time and time again that if you want the best care for a specific injury, go someplace that specializes in that care. The VA healthcare system was designed to treat combat injuries and remains the best at treating paralysis, amputation, traumatic brain injury, blindness, and PTSD. If we want our veterans to receive the best care for their combat injuries, we need to ensure they are getting their care directly from people who specialize in caring for these type of injuries. Eliminating homelessness among the veteran population. I retired from the Chicago Police Department 8 years ago, but I still see the same homeless veterans panhandling at major intersections that I saw when I was patrolling the streets of Chicago. We are not effectively dealing with this problem. Therefore, JWV recommends that the homeless veterans be designated by you as a special needs population to increase the funding allocation to this population and hopefully give some of them a functioning lifestyle which would meet their basic human needs. The Major Richard Starr Act. Major Richard Starr of blessed memory. He passed away 3 weeks ago. H.R. 1282, Senate 344. The JWV supports the efforts to enact the Major Richard Starr Act to end the unfair burden of dollar-for-dollar offset paid for by the disabled, combat-related, ill, and injured service members. Those of you that are sponsoring these bills, thank you. And if you're supporting it, thank you. Ending sexual harassment within the Department of Veterans Affairs. In December of 2020, JWV and many other veterans organizations were outraged by the improper handling of a sexual harassment complaint by a female Jewish veteran at a VA facility because of politics. This led to our call for the Secretary of the VA to resign. Clearly, the VA still has a long way to go to correct the sexual harassment issues identified by the Government Accounting Office. And finally, suicide prevention. On January 1st, 2019, I lost my oldest son who served in the 101st Airborne Division to suicide. So I'm obviously biased that we as a country need to do more. But statistics show an increase in suicide among both active service members and veterans. And with the added stress of COVID-19, 2020 is not going to be any better. We can and we need to do more. We ask and hope that you set aside your political differences to work together and do the right things to care for those who have borne the battle. JWV urges the House and Senate committees to address our concerns on behalf of all veterans, and I thank you. I'll hear all day if you need me.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Very moving testimony. Thank you very much. Mr. Rivera, you're recognized for 5 minutes to present your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Tester, Chairman Tancano, ranking members, Representative Boss, and Senator Moran, and members of the committee. As the National Commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, it is an honor and a privilege to be sitting here today talking to you about our organization. One of the unique things about the Military Order of the Purple Heart is that all of our members are comprised of those that have earned the Purple Heart Medal. We have all been wounded in combat, serving our country and providing freedom for all. I am here today representing our 44,000 members that do the work of the order in 417 chapters, 48 state departments, and 6 regions across the United States. Based on our casualty research, we estimate approximately 350,000 living Purple Heart recipients from all conflicts that require our legislative advocacy. The Military Order of the Purple Heart is a very unique organization. We were since 1932, we have been the original Wounded Warrior organization. We continue to serve all veterans of all wars at no cost by providing tangible benefits to those veterans and families who require our assistance. One of the main priorities, first and foremost, as I need to bring to your attention, is that there was a time when the Military Order of the Purple Heart had a very robust program. We had over 100 service officers all across the United States. We did advocacy on the Hill. We did testimony. We were a huge part of the VSOs, and we did many great things for all those wounded in action. One of the issues that has come to light in our organization is that there was a court ruling in 2019 that provided the rights, the copyrights and trademark of our logo to another organization. In addition, the court severed the organization as a subordinate unit of the Military Order of the Purple Heart. This court ruling also requires the order to request in writing permission from our organization to use our own logo and the words Purple Heart for any fundraising or anything necessary for our specific mission. Since 1932, the Department of Defense has allowed the Military Order of the Purple Heart the use of the Purple Heart Medal in its logo. The Military Order of the Purple Heart is requesting support for the Purple Heart Protection Act. This proposed legislation, if passed, will allow the Military Order of the Purple Heart to use the medal and return the rights of the medal we all earned. Secondly, we are leading a coordinated effort with the National Flag Foundation on legislation that would require the DoD to create a database the same as the Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, and verified by the Department of Defense. The last thing that we would like to discuss is with our very different, extremely, we as an organization, we currently have women and transgender national leaders on our National Executive Committee. I believe that as an organization, we have stepped up to include all. We believe that it doesn't matter when you are on the battlefield, your gender, anything related to you, you still can receive wounds at the hand of the enemy. We feel that we are taking the lead on this, and our goal is to ensure that everybody that has received a Purple Heart has a right to be welcomed with open arms into our organization. Thank you all for your time. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I will now, we'll have questions later after the other two panelists have had a chance to give their opening comments. So I'm going to move on to the actual General Linnington. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Takano, how do you hear me, sir?
General Linnington, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Takano and Tester, ranking members Bost and Moran, distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for today's hearing. Honoring and empowering Wounded Warriors has been at the heart of Wounded Warrior Project's mission since 2003. Meeting the needs of the wounded, ill, and injured veterans who volunteer to serve our country and protect the freedoms we enjoy as Americans is not only a solemn obligation, but a national priority. Over the past year, a year of COVID, Wounded Warrior Project has shifted the programs and services we usually provide in person across the country to virtual offerings. Thousands of virtual connection events, peer support meetings, mental and physical health therapy sessions, and financial assistance and benefits counseling. In 2020 alone, Wounded Warrior Project provided more than $200 million in direct programs and services to warriors, families, and caregivers, nearly 20 million of which was direct financial assistance associated with COVID. And we are grateful for the support of citizens and supporters in making these programs possible. As today's hearing is focused on priorities for the 117th Congress, let me take just a few minutes to share some of our legislative priorities for 2021, namely mental health, toxic exposures, and women veterans. Regarding mental health, the stress of social isolation and financial uncertainty have never been more understood across American society than they are today. But these are issues that have always been more pronounced among post 9/11 veterans. PTSD, anxiety, and depression continue to be 3 of the top 5 most prevalent issues reported by the warriors we serve. Now more than ever, Wounded Warriors will benefit from a community of support that is aligned and inspired to build resilience and prevent suicide among veterans. Your committees have a critical role in overseeing implementation of the Hannon Veterans Mental Health Care Improvement Act and the Veterans Compact Act, and we stand ready to assist in any way we can. We also invite you to consider policies that improve care for co-occurring mental and substance abuse orders. At a time when new or increased substance use is up 13% among all Americans due to COVID-related stress. As to toxic exposure, you're likely familiar with burn pits and the prevalence of lung disorders among former service members deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. At Wounded Warrior Project, 70% of warriors who completed our annual survey reported exposures to at least one hazardous chemical or substance during their time in uniform. This group was 10% more likely to report poor or fair health than those warriors who were not exposed. And more importantly, only 16% of these warriors said they had received care at the VA for their exposure-related illnesses. This is just one reason why we would like the committees to grant VA health eligibility to any veteran who suffered toxic exposures while in service, regardless of their service-connected disability claim status. And we strongly encourage all members to co-sponsor the Toxic Exposure in the American Military Act, or TEAM Act, which includes many of our highest priorities on this issue. Finally, a significant priority for Wounded Warrior Project, and one that has become even more pronounced this past year, is a focus on women veterans. 20 years ago, women made up 6% of the US veteran population. Today, that's about 10%. And in 20 years, 1 in 7 veterans will be female. Wounded Warrior Project is leading how we serve women veterans, and we're proud of the initiative we've put in place over the last many years. Nearly 25,000 women veterans are registered with us, making up roughly 17% of all the wounded warriors we serve. Later this month, we are sharing the results of a year's worth of research and engagement with our women veterans, and hope you'll join us virtually on March 12th at the Brookings Institution as we speak to many of the groundbreaking findings and initiatives in serving this underserved population. For today, consider this. After Wounded Warrior Project transitioned to virtual programming due to COVID-19, we saw women warriors participating at record levels. 43% participated in our virtual events, and in our physical health and wellness programs, 55% of the participants were women, or more than 3 times their share of the alumni population. This last year showed us that we could do better serving our female alumni. We believe VA can do the same because although nearly all women who completed our warrior survey are enrolled in VA healthcare, less than half agreed that VA was able to meet their needs after they left the military. Last year, passing the Deborah Sampson Act was a tremendous first step, but in the year ahead, we want to work with your committees to increase resources for women's health services, to create safer and more welcoming environments in VA facilities, and to optimize alternative channels of care like telehealth. Lastly, we need greater coordination across agencies and disciplines to improve awareness, accessibility, and quality of care for survivors of military sexual trauma. Although MST is not exclusive to women, many will benefit from improved policies to integrate MST-informed care across all disciplines, programs, and outreach efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct honor to be here today, and I stand by for your questions.
Thank you, General Linnington. I now call on Mr. Butler to give his opening statement. I recognize you for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Are you able to hear me?
I am, sir.
Great. Chairman Tester, Chairman Takano, Ranking Member Moran, and Ranking Member Bost, and distinguished members of the committees, on behalf of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and our more than 425,000 members, thank you for the opportunity to testify here today. Perhaps more importantly, I want to thank you for the incredible work that was done in the 116th Congress, especially in 2020. The bipartisan leadership shown by these committees to work together and pass important legislation that included the Commander John Scott Hannon Veterans Mental Health Care Improvement Act and the Johnny Isaacson and David P. Rowe, MD, Veterans Health Care and Benefits Improvement Act, which included the Deborah Sampson Act, also passed timely protections for military-connected students that were facing uncertainty as their schools went fully remote, and established a national suicide prevention hotline 988. These activities were not only instrumental in making progress and delivering on behalf of the nation's veterans, but were the embodiment of what the country wants to see from Congress: actual bipartisan, collaborative efforts to solve the problems we're facing. Throughout the year, despite challenges we all faced, IAVA continued to fight for this generation of veterans. We conducted over 300 Capitol Hill meetings, spoke directly with VA leadership, and worked through the media to highlight the needs of post-9/11 veterans during the pandemic. And while 2020 was a landmark year for veterans legislation, we know that the work is far from over. This year, we will maintain focus on oversight of these recently passed critical reforms to ensure they are being enacted as Congress and the veteran community intended. Further, the pandemic persists even in the face of 3 vaccines, which is why IAVA is proud to be a part of the Veterans Coalition for Vaccination that is helping to combat COVID-19, to raise awareness of the safety and efficacy of the vaccines, to expand access, and to ensure that all Americans have an equitable ability to receive a COVID-19 vaccine. The written testimony IAVA submitted for today highlights additional areas in which we will focus our efforts in 2021, but I want to end by focusing on one in particular. It's been mentioned a few times, but I think it's important that we all commit to it. We must build on the momentum of 2020 to fully and finally address the unmet needs of those veterans suffering from toxic exposures like burn pits. This year will mark the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks and the start of the war in Afghanistan. Just as 9/11 first responders continue to fall sick and die from their exposure to ground zero contaminants, many who deployed overseas in the aftermath of the attacks are dying from the toxic exposures they received while serving in combat zones around the world. We cannot continue to deny the existence of the problem, and we cannot let money continue to stand in the way of taking care of those who were sickened because they volunteered to defend our country. I believe that the 117th Congress, this Congress, and these two committees is where veterans that have been exposed will finally get the health care and benefits that they rightfully deserve. IAVA will work tirelessly on 2 bills to address these issues. We believe that both the Toxic Exposures in the American Military Act and the Presumptive Benefits for Warfighters Exposed to Burn Pits and Other Toxins Act must be passed into law this year. To further delay substantive and holistic action condemns additional veterans and their families to suffer and fight without the support of the government who sent them into harm's way. We thank Senators Tom Tillis and Kirsten Gillibrand for their leadership in working to finally deliver health care and benefits to veterans that have been exposed. Again, thank you all, and we look forward to working with you to finish what the 116th Congress started.
Thank you, Mr. Butler, for your testimony. So that we can ensure that every member and senator here has an opportunity to ask questions, I want to continue the 3-minute rule. I want to praise my Senate colleagues for adhering to that rule, and my House members could do a better job. I'm going to recognize Chairman Tester, who I understand is in a hurry. So Chairman Tester, I'm going to ask you to begin our questioning. I recognize you for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Takano, for your courtesy. And I just want to thank everybody for their testimony. With 3 minutes, you're certainly not going to all get a question, but I could talk to each one of you for extended lengths of time. And in some cases, we have done exactly that. I'm going to start with you, John Rowan. There's been a lot of talk about toxic exposure. I want to nail it down to something that you are very familiar with, and that's the exposure to Agent Orange and the Agent Orange presumptives. And we did some good work last Congress. We got the presumptive list expanded, but there's still 2 more ailments that are backed up by strong science that need to be taken into account and actually need to be put on that presumptive list. Could you talk about, John, if you could, as quickly as you can, talk about why this is so important to get hypertension for one and MGUS is another on the presumptive list? You're muted, John.
All right. Am I unmuted now? Can you hear me?
You're good to go now.
Very good. Sorry about that. I'm not used to WebEx. I've been living on Zoom. The bottom line is I don't know why it was taken off in the first place, other than the fact that the VA thought it was too expensive, because a lot of people suffer from hypertension and the other diseases. The problem is, historically, they've just poo-pooed everything we've ever said about any disease we've ever had. I mean, I got diagnosed with diabetes when I was in my 40s, and I didn't get it until 2002 as a presumptive. I mean, I'm 75 years old. I'm really kind of amazed that I'm still sitting here talking about presumptive diseases related to my military service from over 50 years ago. And especially what's going on with the veterans that came after me, that they still stonewall us on everything. So I really hope that we take a look at this idea of a Toxic Wounds Registry Act. With the electronic health records, we should have everything in there that would talk about exposures of any kind that people could be exposed to over their military service.
Well, thank you, John. Look, I've got another question for Jeremy, but I'm not going to be able to do it because we'll run out of time, and I don't want to make Chairman Takano mad. I just want to tell you guys that vaccine hesitancy, and I've talked about this with every panel, and I'm going to talk to you about yours, is really a big deal. And amongst our veterans, I hope that each one of your organizations do the very best to educate your members and let them know that getting the vaccination is really important if we're going to move forward. And if all you do that would be very, very helpful. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you being here today. Wish we had more time. Back to you, Chairman Takano.
Thank you, Chairman Tester. I will now recognize myself for 3 minutes. John Rowan, always enjoy our conversations. I want to actually turn to General Lincoln, but I didn't want to ignore our relationship, and I appreciate the work that you did with Senator Tester on the presumptives. And such a great thing that we got the Vietnam Veterans Blue Water Navy Act done last Congress. General Lincoln, I want to just express my gratitude for your organization's helping one of my constituents in her time of need. You mentioned the importance of peer support. Could you talk about how peer support mental health programs can be a resource for veterans?
Yes, Chairman, it's really important, as you know firsthand, especially in communities or in rural areas or where warriors make their livelihoods. The ability to reach out to other veterans, to share experiences, talk about issues that are going on, and stay connected is really the first step in stronger resilience. Our model at Wounded Warrior Project is to connect, serve, and empower. You can't serve and treat the physical or emotional scars of war until you connect warriors with each other. And in many cases, that connection occurs through peers, in peer support groups and in engagement events. We've expanded our peer support network about 3 times just in the past 2 years. And certainly over this past year during COVID, we've expanded even more with the benefits of our virtual offerings that have really exploded in the ability to reach out to wounded, ill, and injured veterans and get them involved. So thank you for the opportunity to serve your veteran and his mother. And I really look forward to the opportunity to educate other members on the programs and services we provide that augment what the VA does in more remote areas.
Thank you, General. I want to turn to Paralyzed Veterans of America, Mr. Zurfluh. What do you see as the most important priorities for supporting increased need for IVF and other reproductive technologies at VA?
It's probably, thank you, Chairman Cowell. Probably the most important thing are costs, obviously. Our members have a very finite window after you receive a spinal cord injury or illness diagnosis. Unfortunately, the clock is ticking on fertility for us. I experienced that myself as an individual. Many of them weigh the cost of having a family, and that cost is a heavy pressure on them and shouldn't be there. I've known personally a friend of mine who, if it wasn't for a medical settlement, they probably wouldn't have had a family. And that medical settlement gave them the opportunity to have that family. And it was a very expensive measure, but it was very important to them. And thankfully, they have 3 wonderful kids they're raising. So probably the cost and any assistance to relieve that burden would be critical.
Thank you, Mr. Zurfluh. My time is up. I do hope to talk to you and your organization more about long-term care issues that you brought up. I do want to recognize now Ranking Member Boss for 3 minutes. Go ahead, Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to direct this first question to both General Linnington and also John Rowan. Last week, Chairman Takano and I introduced the VA Vaccine Act. The bill would expand access to vaccines to all veterans and all the caregivers of all of those who are in certain long-term or home-based care programs. Our bill requires the enrolled veterans to be prioritized first, and then stipulates that the vaccine access to those other groups is, of course, depends on the availability. Do you support the bill? And if so, why or why not? And either General, you can go first, I guess.
Yeah, Ranking Member, I'll say we massively support the bill. As you know, many of our wounded, ill, and injured warriors and caregivers, especially those in our independence program, need the vaccine and need it now. And sometimes they don't meet the threshold of the age requirements in the states or the areas that the vaccines are becoming available. So we are highly publicizing this effort. Luckily, many of the VA facilities in areas where we have warriors that are at higher risk that are captured in the legislation you just got approved will benefit us greatly. And in fact, the VA right here in Jacksonville just reached out to veterans in need that are at higher risk and making the vaccines available starting this weekend. So we're excited, and we're going to do everything we can to support getting our veterans the shots quickly here in the next month or two.
Thank you, General. John?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, every time I heard somebody say, talking about the susceptible people to COVID being elderly with pre-existing conditions, I said, that's every Vietnam veteran I know. And the sad part is many of my Vietnam veterans never filed for disability claims. Either some of them are doing all right, they feel they're okay. I've heard more people than I care to think about tell me that, well, I don't deserve it, or, you know, I really want to save the money for somebody who needs it. And they don't understand how the system works. And because of that, they're not in the system. And because they're not in the system, they can't access those vaccines, which is terrible. And I had to go through hell to get my wife to get her vaccine through the state. And she got hers 4 weeks later than I did in the VA. And the VA was a much more pleasant experience, I can tell you that. So this is a good bill.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate that. Real quickly, I just have a real quick question for Mr. Butler as well. I'm sure you're aware of the bill HR 637, which is the one for the rapid retraining program on COVID. And my question is, we're trying to push for the full funding of the 3,500 slots. Are you in support of that?
Thank you, Ranking Member Boss. The short answer, since time is short, is 100% yes in support of that.
That's what I needed. With that, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Bost. I appreciate your partnership with the access to vaccines for our veterans. Vaccines need to be a bipartisan issue. We need to emphasize, especially to our veteran population, the importance of taking the vaccine when it's available, and we want to make it available. And precisely because our veterans play such a leadership role in their communities, people will look to them as examples. And they're going to be so important in terms of overcoming hesitancies to take the vaccine. So I really want to emphasize, I appreciate your bipartisan partnership on that bill. So thank you. I now call upon Senator Moran for 3 minutes. Ranking Member, go ahead.
Chairman Takano, thank you. I would echo what you just said about bipartisanship in regard to most of everything we do, and maybe hopefully everything, but particularly in regard to COVID and its prevalence right now, the vaccination program. And I would again encourage all of us to work together to get the VA to be able to vaccinate spouses and caregivers, the people that are surrounding our veterans. I want to go back just a moment because I know that you asked the American Legion to, I'm not going to ask him a question, but I want to make a comment, to remain on. And I just wanted to highlight in the commander and Commander Oxford's testimony, he indicated that Emporia, Kansas has been chosen. Phillips and American Legion were in our state and looked at a number of communities for the Atlas Pod. And I want to thank the American Legion for their leadership. And we're very pleased that you've selected a community in Kansas for what will turn out, I think, to be a very valuable opportunity for veterans to access the VA and care. And so thank you very much, Commander, for that announcement. I'm going to turn to General Lennington. In your written testimony, General, you highlighted the work of the Wounded Warrior Project that's been doing over the past year with veterans all over the country, and a finding that in your 2020 annual survey, I'm particularly interested in the figure that you cited that 89% of survey respondents indicated they were definitely or probably exposed to toxic exposure during their military service. I mean, that's nearly everyone. That's a huge amount of those who serve our nation. Can you tell us more about what you've been hearing from veterans that you've been working with, and your WWP annual report regarding their experiences with toxic exposure? What does that mean to us? What should we take from that fact?
Senator, thanks for that question. We believe that's a A top priority for the VA should be expanding healthcare access to all veterans who are exposed to toxic substances, regardless of their disability claim. Again, the statistic you mentioned for our population is a staggeringly high statistic. Veterans who already have serious illnesses shouldn't have to wait months or even years for much of the life-saving care that they need as they await adjudication of a claim or an appeal. So we want a presumptive finding for those veterans to go get immediate health care access today, and then we can take care of the benefits and the claims process down the road. And I know I was very happy to hear my friend John Rowan. John's been working with this for dozens of years, as have all the other members of this committee. And I think we are of one voice of needing action in this upcoming 117th Congress to address toxic exposures.
Thank you, General. John Rowan and the VVA are the ones who really brought home to me the significance of toxic exposure at a conference in Wichita, Kansas now a number of years ago, and I appreciate John very much. My time has expired. I would, in that, I won't ask a question, but you indicated in your legislative priorities that the top 3 priorities of yours, General, would be addressed if we pass the Toxic Exposure in American Military or the TEAM Act. And that captures my attention that in one piece of legislation, maybe we can do major significant things in regard to toxic exposure. And I look forward to exploring that with you and others further.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moran. I now recognize Representative Lamb for 3 minutes. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to the panelists for joining us here today, for all of the great work that you do. It's good to see you again. Quickly wanted to pick up on something that Senator Moran just touched on, which is the Atlas program. I'm assuming, Mr. Rowan, that you would have members from the VVA who have used one of the Atlas sites. We have one here in Western Pennsylvania, up north of my district in Linesville, and it's in a VFW. I'm very interested in how it works because I think there's a lot of performance, or a lot of promise. Mr. Rowan or anyone on the panel, do you have feedback for us from your members about being able to access one of the Atlas sites during the pandemic and whether it's worked out well for them so far? You're on mute, Mr. Rowan, I think, in case you are answering my question. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't have any personal experience with that program. I'd have to reach out to people to see what they know about it.
That's okay.
I'm going to find out, though.
Got it. So let me move on. I wanted to touch on January 6th briefly while we're all here. And first of all, thank you. I know many of you have made efforts to look at whether any of the charged individuals showed up on your membership rolls and can take action based on that. And I think that's good. I also just want to encourage any of you to consider further, more affirmative steps, particularly as it relates to things like the use of any facilities controlled by your organization or membership lists. No one's asking you to become J. Edgar Hoover here. That's really not what I mean. But, there's been a lot of reporting that, for example, the Oath Keepers, which are an organization that targets veterans and preys on them with a false notion of what their oath means. And they are also an organization that has openly acknowledged their belief that they're in a civil war with the United States. And so they are actually actively violating their oath every day. They have met in VSO halls around the country, various organizations, different depending where they are. But I think it's time that we all consider more active measures to know, is an organization like the Oath Keepers showing up in your space? Are its members using your email lists or mailing lists? And obviously that takes a little bit of work to find out. So I don't have much time, but does any panelist have an example or thought? Go ahead, Mr. Rowan. Looks like you're.
Yeah, I don't have anything on using the holes, but we did a whole thing with Facebook about the misuse of our name and our logo. And we had a report that we put out about that, about both foreigners and local people trying to use our name for scams, for moving people in different directions, perhaps with issues, things like that. It was pretty extensive, and Facebook did a whole lot of work on that with us.
That was good work. I did see that.
Yeah,
so
I'll make sure we send you a report, a copy of the report that we produced on that.
I thank you very much. And I am
Back
out of
send it
time.
to the whole committee.
I just want to encourage you all to consider whether we can do a little more to kind of police our own here and be eyes and ears up and down the chain. And so, you know, things like Facebook groups, for example, and of course, any sort of meeting space in the real world, we all need to be on the lookout for that. And so, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb, and Mr. Rowan, thank you. Actually, the work that BVA did was part of what led to a full committee hearing on internet spoofing of veterans and taking up veteran identities, and we appreciate the work that the organization did in that space. I now call upon Senator Blumenthal for 3 minutes. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really appreciate all of you being here. I'm so proud to be on this call in this meeting and hearing with you. I want to thank you all for your really excellent testimony and single out two issues. One of them, first of all, the toxic and poisonous substances that have become so much a part of our modern battlefield. And in that respect, the testimony offered by Mr. Butler, these statistics are just absolutely horrifying, that 88% of IAVA members were exposed to burn pits during their deployments, and over 88% of them exposed believe that they have already or may have symptoms, which speaks to the incredible impact of these poisons. And on that score also, John Rowan, you talk about that issue, but also the continuing absolutely abhorrent numbers on veteran suicides. So to you first, if I may, John, thank you for all of your great work on this issue, as well as poisons and military assault and all the other topics that you cover. But let me ask you about veteran suicide. What can we do? What should we be doing to address the invisible wounds of war, PTS? You refer eloquently to the horrors of war. What more can and should we do?
I wish I had a magic button. I really do. I think the key thing is engagement, and we've seen a lot of the different organizations doing outreach to their membership and trying to talk to people. Because I know from our perspective that while suicide's a problem and a problem amongst younger veterans, it's still predominantly us older veterans who are dealing with that problem, quite frankly. And it's something we've been dealing with as Vietnam veterans forever. I don't have a good answer, but in getting people involved is important. So that's why it's important the VA need to do more outreach and make it easier for people to come into the VA, not harder. And, you know, that's the problem you've got right now. If you don't have a service-connected illness, if you don't fall into certain categories, you become a category 8, which might as well not even exist because it means don't bother. It's telling the veteran don't bother to come in. So you need to get rid of it.
Thank you for that answer. I think we're all grappling with it, and you note in your testimony a lot of the victims of suicide are 55 and older. My time is just about to expire, but to Jeremy Butler, I just want you to know that I am the sponsor of legislation that will presume service connection on K2 veterans who suffer from cancer and other diseases. I think that same kind of service connection presumption should apply to other illnesses that are related to poison or toxins on the battlefield, and I'd like to work with you on it. Thanks for raising this issue so forcefully.
Thank you, Senator, and we totally agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. I now call on Representative Nels for 3 minutes. Representative? Representative, are you here? Before I move on to the next member, Representative, we'll come back to Representative Nels. I do want to I do want to let the American Legion know that we do not anticipate any more questions for the American Legion. We do appreciate that you were standing by out of courtesy. I want to thank you all, Commander, and all of your colleagues for your testimonies today and all of the work you do on behalf of America's veterans. So thank you so much. And I want to just formally let you know that your services are greatly appreciated, and you're now dismissed. Thank you. Thank you so much. Is Mr. Knowles returned? He's not. So we'll move on to Representative Miller Meeks. Dr. Miller Meeks.
Thank you so much, Chairman Takano. And first, if I may, Mr. Zurfluh, when I became a nurse in the Army, my first duty assignment was at the old Walter Reed Ward 10, taking care of paralyzed veterans. And so I've turned my share of striker frames in the past. And thank you for, for your testimony here today and for all you do. This is a broad question, Mr. Zurfluh or General Leninger, you can answer. 12 years ago at the University of Iowa, I was asked about recreational marijuana and medicinal marijuana as a physician and a nurse and director of public health. And at the time, I was very emphatic that we needed to change the Schedule I designation by the FDA for medicinal marijuana so we could do research. Fast forward now, 3 years ago, the state of Iowa has authorized and legislated medical marijuana. I've attended the medical marijuana board hearings, and the only research that we have because of the Schedule I designation for medical marijuana is from Israel or from Europe, and the research out of Israel is quite good. So I don't know, I've heard from veterans in my community and people I've worked with, people that were in my units with me about medical marijuana, about treatment, some of them for PTSD, some in traumatic brain injury, some for chronic pain. And I was just wondering if you, because the VA is a federal facility, if you could share with us your experience or what you're hearing from your members, and is this something that we need to address? Thank you so much, and with that, I'll yield and listen.
I'll go first. I could. Thank you, Representative Miller Meeks. We fully support the medical marijuana research, and being from Washington State, where I currently reside, it is, I think, heavily used for pain and other resources, and I think it's something we should look into more. I think it could be beneficial in the long run, is my short answer.
Representative Miller Meeks, likewise here, we support HR 712 and certainly anything that helps veterans with symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury. We need to make every available resource to them consistent with federal laws, of course. And we certainly support the looking into this in more detail and would love to be part of your committee as we go forward on this topic.
Thank you all very much. Thanks for that testimony, and we'll continue to push for the Schedule I designation to be changed so we can do active research and help our veterans. Thank you so much.
Dr. Miller Meeks, thank you so much, and it's good to know your thoughts on this as a medical professional and someone on the other side of the aisle. It's been gathering support, bipartisan support for this research for quite some time. I'm hopeful we're going to be able to move forward with something. I now want to call on my good friend and neighbor, Dr. Raul Ruiz, actually, Dr. Ruiz, I jumped the gun. Forgive me, sir. I've got to, you're my good friend, but I've also got a good friend from Indiana, Mr. Mervan. Mr. Mervan, you're recognized for 3 minutes, and then I'll go to Dr. Ruiz.
Thank you, Chairman. And you are my good friend also, as everyone on this committee. I hope to build relationships with, to call you all my good friends as we go forward serving the veterans who have served us. As subcommittee chairman of technology and modernization, my question is about patient portal. And in May of 2018, the VA contracted with Cerna to replace My Healthy Vet, and at least in the short term, as part of the electronic health records modernization program. The new portal, My VA Health, will replace My Healthy Vet in areas that have implemented the new electronic health record program. My question is, what have you heard about the new Cerna portal? Has the VA engaged with you to inform or train veterans on the new portal? And then David, being in Washington, Spokane is one of the facilities we're rolling out. If there's any feedback for us with the interactions with veterans with the VA and the electronic health records. So I thank you.
Does any member wish to?
And one of the things that we've been dealing with are C files right now, as you know, are delivered in paper form or as a compact disc, and certainly modernization of alternatives to a CD or a fax line are important. So we certainly support your subcommittee and modernizing the VA technology to make all information available to veterans as they both process a claim and as we represent them in adjudicating an appeal.
Thank you. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, my good friend from Indiana, Mr. Moran. Now I turn to my good friend and neighbor from the neighboring district, Dr. Ruiz, for 3 minutes. Dr. Ruiz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much for your support as well for the burn pits and other toxic exposures. As the co-founder of the Burn Pits Bicameral Caucus, it has been the rallying call for me and many of all of you to come together and address this once and for all. We cannot let burn pits be the Agent Orange of our generations. Absolutely not. Last Congress, I introduced the Presumptive Benefits for Warfighters Exposed to Burn Pits and Other Toxins Act. The bill would establish a list of new diseases as service-connected for which veterans can receive VA benefits as a result of toxic exposures while serving in the military, including burn pits. It would provide access to VA health and disability services for veterans, including those served in Afghanistan, Iraq, Gulf War, K2, and every other country where our service members fought and were exposed to toxins. My bill would add a new list of presumptive diseases, including pulmonary diseases like asthma, constrictive bronchitis, chronic bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, emphysema, pulmonary fibrosis, and some cancers like gastrointestinal cancer and pancreatic cancer. In addition, the Secretary of VA, in conjunction with the National Academies, are directed to evaluate petitions to determine whether there is scientific evidence of the link between human disease and exposure to one of the covered toxins and for any additional toxins. And so my question is to Jeremy Butler, who's also been a strong advocate for this. Jeremy, are there any other additions or any feedback that you can give at this moment?
Well, first off, thank you, Dr. Ruiz. Appreciate all your leadership on this. You have been a great friend to IAVA and our members, and we've enjoyed working with you. The short answer, I'd say, is we 100% support your legislation. And I think what we really need to keep in mind as we go forward here in the 117th Congress is probably taking the best of every piece of these legislations. There's a number of them out there focused on K2, some focuses on research. All of these ultimately, I think, need to be rolled up into the best possible, strongest bill this year. As John Rowan mentioned, it's 50 plus years that we're still trying to get Agent Orange right. Like, we don't want to be doing that here. We need to get everything as much as possible into one piece of legislation. So we certainly support your bill. We also support the TEAM Act because I think both of them bring very strong measures to this. And I think the best path forward is to frankly pull the best of all those together and get it into one strong bill.
Well, I certainly appreciate the leadership of our great chairman, Mark Takano, and the committee staff to ensure that collaborative approach will happen so that we can get the best care for our veterans in a timely manner, which is as soon as possible. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Dr. Ruiz. I just want to make a last call for any other members of the House or senators who may be on the call who want a chance to ask any questions. Are there any other members who I see? Representative Frankel. Representative
Hello
Frankel,
there again.
proud mother of a Marine veteran. Go ahead. You're recognized for 3 minutes.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, all of you, for your service. I have a question. I'd like to get your opinion on the value of service dogs, and whether you think there are enough or available.
Yeah, I can jump in very quickly and say we very much support the expansion of service dogs to as many that need them as possible. They're an incredible asset. We know that for a fact, and we support any effort to make it easier or as easy as possible for veterans in need to get the support of a service dog.
Congresswoman, I echo Jeremy's comments. Really, whatever works for the veteran that's struggling with invisible wounds of war, we are supportive of, and in many cases, a service dog fills that need. Wounded Warrior are partners with many organizations that provide service dogs, and we welcome being part of a caucus that would look at that particular issue and how we might expand it.
Can you comment on which disability or illness is, that the service dogs are assets for, and could you possibly quantify the?
Yes, this is an area that is actually a subject matter expert of mine. I'm Ernie Rivera with the Military of the Purple Heart. I currently have a service dog here. I've had a service dog for roughly 6 years. One of the unique things about it, I even have a service dog organization which I provide service dogs to veterans all across the United States. One of the things that's unique about a service dog is that it does enable the veteran to have a battle buddy with them. It's something that it helps everybody regardless if it's something that is physiological or psychological. One of the key things to the service dogs is that there needs to be some kind of a litmus test regarding the cost put on the dog. One of the things that we see is many different organizations out there will put a cost very high on the dog, and it basically supports their organization. The PAWS Act is a wonderful act. I think it does a lot of good things, but one of the things that we need to do is to ensure that the dog is properly trained and does the right thing for the veteran within a good cost factor.
Representative Frankel, if I can jump in real quick. Paralyzed Veteran supports service dogs. We support the access as a civil right. A lot of our members have mobility impairment needs and use service animals on a daily basis. And I'd be more than welcome to talk to you offline more about it.
Thank you. Could anyone quantify the need? Okay, well, maybe we can follow.
So I think that I can. I mean, it has saved my life. I can assure you of that. And as a veteran that is a combat wounded veteran, I can tell you that my service dog has provided me with stuff, and I have seen the effects of them all across the United States with people who truly get something extra out of it. It's a lot easier to go places when you are suffering from PTSD, when you do have a dog with you. And the dogs need to be trained properly so that it's not a stressful situation for the individual. It needs to be something that when you go out there and you have the dog, it's properly trained and it gives you a therapeutic value. And they really do help. There is a huge quantifiable asset to it.
I thank you all. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Well, we thank Representative Frankel. Thank you so much for your interest in service dogs. I know that you are a cat owner, and it's really wonderful that a cat owner takes this interest in service dogs. So thank you very much. I now call on Mr. Trone for 3 minutes. Mr. Trone.
Thank you very much. Hey, Certified Community Health Behavioral Health Centers, CCBCH, is General Linnington and Mr. Butler. These have been really crucial on helping us with mental health care during the pandemic. And how can the continued expansion of these help improve access to mental health care for our vets in particular?
Congressman Trone, it really does help because it provides additional resources in the community for veterans, wounded warriors to get additional treatment and care. Really, the key to the program is VA coordinating the care in the communities and then making sure there's continuity of services provided between the community resource provider and the VA medical center and really all the other organizations in the community that come together to help the veteran. Veterans return to communities. That's where they get their best treatment. And certainly the Mission Act was a big piece of standing up and expanding the access to care in the communities. And we're huge advocates. And thank you for that legislation.
Yes, sir. And I would just echo that. I think getting more care into the community is key. That's why we supported so much the Commander Hannon Act to do just that. We need more access to care in more places where it frankly just is not available. And any way that we can get that done is going to be helpful. We know that so many of those that are dying by suicide are not connected to the VA right now. So anything that improves access to care in more areas throughout the country is going to help.
And along the same lines, our veterans need to be able to have transportation to get that health care and lead independent lives. I'm co-leading with Republican Congressman Dan Muser the Auto for Veterans Act. Right now, vets with disability can get one vehicle to purchase in their entire lifetime. One. I spoke to a vet this morning. He's got over 500,000 miles on his vehicle. And so this would allow vets to purchase a new vehicle through the VA Automobile Grant Program once every 10 years, rather than once in their life. So Mr. Zerloff, what other barriers are out there like this that our vets are facing to access health care or mental health care, and how can we help them?
When it comes specifically to the automobile grant, Representative, because of their bad experience on air travel, a lot of veterans feel the need to drive. And so they put, like you mentioned, the 500,000 miles, a lot of wear and tear in their van. And so they're driving to do everything, to access care, to travel, etc. The ability to buy a new vehicle every 10 years would help ease that burden. And also there's another subset of our membership who buy a cheaper car because they can transfer from a manual chair into the driver's seat. And as they age, their shoulders go, their body goes, like all of us. And they have to have the need to have either a ramp van or a lift seat to get into that driver's seat. That's a huge part of our population. And to give them the opportunity to buy another vehicle within that 10-year window would be a very, very critical burden relieved.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trone. I now call upon Representative Capter, who actually represents the district in our country that has the highest concentration of auto manufacturing activity. So following on that conversation, Representative Capter, recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, what a pleasure to participate in this hearing today and to thank everyone who is a witness, who have worked so hard to help our veterans across this country. Without you, I can guarantee you the World War II Memorial would not be in existence. All of the housing programs that we know, the healthcare programs, the improvements we've made to our veterans care centers around the country. My hat's off to you. I salute you. Thank you so much. I have a couple of concerns this morning. One is any advice you might have for our committee regarding improving housing opportunities for veterans in settings where they receive shelter plus care. Which programs do you think operate well? Where do you think we can expand programs? Secondly, on the issue of mental health, we know there's a huge need in the veterans community, but there's also a need in the civilian community. We are 100,000 doctors short in the behavioral sciences in our country. And that filters into the veteran system when we do not have enough individuals with the highest level of training in these extremely complicated fields dealing with the human brain. And I'm interested in any suggestions you might have where we might expand our efforts to help people afford an education or use our defense medicine systems more effectively, and then require a period of service in our veterans facilities across the country, both for doctors and for advanced behavioral care nurses. If you have any thoughts on that, know that this member is extremely interested. And finally, when I first arrived in Congress many years ago and got on the Veterans Committee, before I served on the Defense Committee, it became clear to me that in the research budget of the VA, even though the majority of patients reported with behavioral science issues, the number of research protocols was down to almost nothing. There weren't even scientists there directing new research from the VA in this area. Could you provide any insight on whether it has improved or we need to do much better there? So the question of housing, and then behavioral care, the production of nurses and doctors, and then thirdly, the research budget. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It was a lot, ma'am. I can just jump in very quickly on the housing part, just really to echo your call for more work to be done there. We have a program called the Quick Reaction Force, supported more than 2,500 clients last year. And the number 2 issue that people reached out to us, that veterans reached out to us for, was on housing and homelessness. So I certainly don't have all the answers, but certainly will work with you and your staff to find solutions, because that is a very big problem.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Butler. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll jump in on the school, on the need for more medics, basically. And that's what I'd like to suggest, that we need to expand the scholarship programs that we used to have for medics and caregivers in the military, to convert them into doctors and physicians, not just physicians, but psychiatrists and psychologists, counselors even, you know, is such a desperate need all over the place. So, I mean, we need to, we have these people who go through great programs in the military. They get out of the military and nobody knows they exist. It's too bad. It's a loss.
Mr. Sachs.
Paralyzed Veterans of America supports that research. It's critical to our membership, for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Zurfluh. Mr. Sachs, you have something to say about this?
Well, I'm going to speak as a cop for a minute. There's just not adequate funding for psychiatric care. It's worse now than when I started 30 years ago in law enforcement. So you're absolutely right. But I know that there's only a limited amount of money. So you have to do the best you guys can, I guess.
Well, Mr. Sachs, thank you. Well, I'll remind you, Mr. Sachs, that my colleague from the state of Ohio is on the Appropriations Committee as senior appropriator, and so we're very fortunate to have her rejoin the Veterans Affairs Committee. I'll just remind everyone that 10% of all the medical residencies in our country are funded through the VA. I agree, we need to really examine this question of producing the medical practitioners across our country, and include an initiative to get them into rural areas as well. Anyway, I want to now call upon the now parked representative from the state of North Carolina, Mr. Cawthorn. Mr. Cawthorn, I'm pleased to see you're parked. You're recognized for 3 minutes.
Well, Chairman Takano, I genuinely appreciate that. And also, Mr. Zurfluh, I wanted to just say I'm in a wheelchair myself. I am not a veteran, but I do share your concern for veterans not being able to afford having hand controls in their vehicles. I know how much freedom that has provided me to be able to drive again. So I will have my staff starting to look into that. And I know that you cited a 4-digit bill that the House has that might have some funding for that. So we'll look into see if we can.
Yep, we lost him.
Mr. Cawthorn, your cell phone connection is really spotty, and so we can't hear you. Um,
He turns off.
you know what? If you turn off I'm going to, even though you're a House member, I'm going to, for this moment, allow you to turn off your video. It might help with the bandwidth so that we can hear your audio. That's my suggestion. Maybe you turn off your video so that we can hear the audio. I don't know if you can hear me. Mr. Cawthorn, can you hear? Yeah, the audio is just not, we just cannot hear you. The transmission is not working. I'm going to go to Mr. Nell while we try to work out the technical difficulties with the connection with Mr. Cawthorn. Mr. Nell, I'm going to recognize you for 3 minutes. Mr. Nell. Mr. Nels. We're having trouble with Mr. Cawthorn's transmission, so I'm going to move to you while we work that out. So I recognize you for 3 minutes of question if you're ready.
Yeah, I thank you, Chairman. I really have no specific questions. I just want to thank everybody for what you do for our veterans and for your past service. Mr. Rivera, I see your CIB up on your shoulder. Thank you, and your Purple Heart. I have one as well, my CIB. And just thank everybody for what they do. And our veterans, past, present, and future, they need our attention. They're struggling so much, and we just have to do our veterans, and we must do them right. And I believe, I have a lot of faith and confidence in our leadership on this committee. And I know that we're out there doing the right things because our heart is in the right place. We must never, ever forget our veterans. And I believe we have the leadership and the personnel on these committees, as well as we support your organizations, and there's mutual respect for each other. And I look forward to serving on this committee and doing our veterans a whole lot of good. They need this attention. There's so much PTSD. There's so much struggle and strife out there that I'm honored to be part of this team. And I want to thank you, sir, for your time. Thank you all, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen.
I thank you for those sentiments, Representative Nels. I look forward to working with you. It looks like Mr. Cawthorn is no longer connected. I just want to see if there's any other members who have not asked questions who are interested in questioning our panel. It's my last call. Last call for members who wish to question. Otherwise, I will make some closing remarks, but I'll call on my colleague, Mr. Bost, if he is still here, if he would like to make any closing remarks. And he may not be still with us. Let me just thank all of our panelists, for participating today. I have known many of you for a good while now, and I appreciate the work that you do on behalf of our veterans, the advocacy, the ways that you hold our feet to the fire and you make us aware of the urgency of the work that we need to do. And I thank all my colleagues in both chambers for being here and their devotion to serving our veterans as well. So with that, all members will have 5 legislative days to revise and extend the remarks and include extraneous material for the record. Again, thank you for your presentation, panelists. This hearing is now adjourned.